European company. Cats a scan, something like
Good evening. I'd like to call the school board meeting for Tuesday, September 29th, 2015 to order. Roll call, please.
Vandy Creek here.
Van Dyke here. Van Leyland here.
Loved it here.
Williams here. We have a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. On the adopting of the agenda, I'd like to make one change on here. I'd like to move J5 before I. That is the Prickmar Field at Clipstein Park discussion and action before the discussion items.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the agenda with the change.
Yep.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Citizens and their delegations, is there anybody here this evening that'd like to speak to anything that's not on the agenda? Anything that's not on the agenda? Okay, move on to 2, Bright Lights presentation. Tammy?
Our Bright Lights presentation tonight is about the Expect Respect group that started at Parkview Middle School. It's a group of female students, roughly 12 per year, that are nominated by the Parkview School Counselor and then screened by Amy Dillenberg, our school social worker, for participating in the group. We connect the students with Stacy Lewis from the Golden House and Katie Gazella from Open Doors Youth Services, and they take the girls through a 12-week research-based curriculum during the second semester of 8th grade and 13-week Expect Respect curriculum during the first semester of grade 9. The group meets once per week for about 45 minutes to an hour. Groups are held at school during the day on a rotating schedule, so no single class is missed more than once per month. Parents are notified of their child's participation and can opt the child out if they wish so. We've had only one student opted out by a parent in 3 years, which is just awesome. After they complete the 25-week curriculum, the girls meet with the facilitators once per month. The current junior group, which includes one sophomore, who is Sydney, who is nicely here tonight to speak to us, has been meeting monthly for 2 years as a follow-up to their 25-week experience. Chain Reaction took the premise set forth in Expect Respect and made them even more universal, and many of the Expect Respect participants from different grade levels were a part of our Chain Reaction Day. The girls have great focus and drive to continue the momentum started with Chain Reaction. So I am going to introduce to you Sydney, who is not feeling well tonight, but she made it her mission to get here. So I gave her water and I gave her a cough drop, so just bear with her. So hopefully she makes it through her presentation. Sydney?
Hi guys, I'm Sydney. I'm a sophomore at Ashwaubenon, and I've been a part of, this is our 3rd year doing Expect Respect, and I'll just give you some background knowledge on the group before I launch into the rest. Expect Respect it's essentially a support group, and in middle school it started out as 7th and 8th graders, so I've been in the group since 7th grade, or 8th, I think it's 7th grade, yeah. So our first year, I guess, was kind of just get to know each other activities, and like no one really was open about like our problems at that point, because you know you're in a group with people you wouldn't normally talk to, you know, you're with upperclassmen even in the middle school. So our first year was kind of just a get to know each other / warm up year. And then once we got into 8th grade, I ended up being the only 8th grader in a group of all freshmen. So I went up to the high school for our weekly meetings. So, that was kind of an experience for me. So our second year, our first year we did like lessons, but like I said, no one really went in depth because we didn't know that this was going to be like a permanent thing. So when we got to the 8th grade year for me and 9th grade for the other girls, that was when we started kind of going in depth with our activities, and we started talking about like what's healthy in not only, like partner relationships, but family relationships and friendships. So we would talk about that, and we would talk about how, like what's positive, what's not positive, what should be happening, what shouldn't be happening, and coping skills. So then last year for our, my freshman year, their sophomore year, it was our third year like doing the group. So we had all gotten to know each other. We started off with like 12 people in the group, and then it dwindled down. No one opted to get out of the group, just, for schedule reasons or like moving. So the group, all in all, was just like a really positive like experience for us. And then this past like 2 weeks ago, I want to say, we the members of the group of Expect Respect, we were all highly encouraged to go to Rachel's Challenge. And what Rachel's Challenge is it's basically like a positive chain reaction, and we learned how she used her words to do something positive, whereas there's like two sides to every like phrase. So she used her words for causing a chain reaction to be with compassion and love, and the other reason can be for, like death and destruction. And in chain reaction, we did many group building activities, and we opened up about some of our experiences and why we were in chain reaction, and why we do some of the things that we do. So Expect Respect ties in with chain reaction because the lessons that we learn within Expect Respect can be used to cause a chain reaction. We're taught how to be responsible and caring and compassionate towards everybody, and hope that it can also cause a chain reaction. So we can use our words to do good instead of bad. So in that, we want Expect Respect to not only branch out to the girls in the group, but to possibly help everybody. So there's a club that we want to make starting out in the high school, and it branches off from Rachel's Challenge. It's called Friends of Rachel, and it's a group, it's a support group, but we want to incorporate some of the lessons that we learned in Expect Respect. And I talked to Mr. Ribbons and Mr. Nelson, and they're both really supportive of it. So that's just a group that we want to start at the high school, and we'll see how it goes in the high school, and then hopefully we can branch it out into everybody. And it's not just a group for students. We want it to be a group that teachers can feel safe in as well. And I also think that it'll be a great way for students and teachers to, bond in a healthy way. So I think that's all.
Okay, thanks. Good job, thank you very much. Anything else to add, or is that?
Unless you have questions, Chris is here to answer questions, Dirk is here to answer questions.
I guess I'd say thank you for courageously speaking to us.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I don't know the factual information, but I had heard through the grapevine that the numbers of people at Rachel's Challenge weren't that great this year. So my question to you maybe today or just overall is what do you need from us or from your school to make sure, and you don't have to answer right now, but what do you need from our support to help you in this awesome work? Because I know we've tried to jumpstart it in the past and it's fizzled, and I don't know if it's co-curricular support or other. I'm not putting you on the spot, but I mean, like, how can we support you?
I guess support really is just the biggest thing. Like, we need support not only from the people within the school, but, you know, from everybody. Like, we don't want people to feel pressured to join the group, or like, if they do join the group, we don't want them to feel pressured to share as we do and expect respect. We want it to be a safe, like, but fun environment as well.
Okay.
So, like I said, I guess support is just the biggest thing.
Okay. And Dirk, do we now have this as official co-curricular, or is it evolving into that? I know in years past it has relied on, I think, the volunteer efforts of teachers versus being an official co-curricular.
Yeah, we spoke just this week, or just last week, so it is in the initial processes of becoming something. We want to make sure we want to make sure that we both do it the right way, but we also want to make sure that we support and add to the kinds of things that the Expect Respect group did. So we want to make sure that it follows that group, follows some of the things that they've done. So what we do is going to end up working very, very closely with Ms. Dillenberg, the students in that group, to make sure that we remain, you know, pretty faithful to the kinds of things that they were doing, and it doesn't take a different route of its own. As Sydney said, we're more interested in having students who are there for the right reasons and who are totally comfortable. The number of students is less important than the passion, dedication, and commitment of the students who are there. So we're gonna start out doing it right. Is it right now an official club on the books? No, because we only just met last week.
Okay, because I think there was a Friends of Rachel that met intermittently since the previous Rachel's Challenge, and I just want to make sure that the reason it fizzles is not because we haven't provided the support it requires. So.
No, not at all. It's not for lack of support.
Okay, thank you very much. Move on to consent agenda. Consists of the minutes of the regular meeting held on Monday, August 24th. The schedule of checks written 8/19/15 to 9/21/15. Staffing that administrate new hire of Tricia Verts to a full-time grade 2 limited term instructor at Valley View. We got 12 additional staffing requests and 16 co-curricular contracts.
Motion approved.
I'll second.
Get a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. H, Superintendent's report.
Okay, I have just a couple of announcements. I want to start by recognizing Mrs. Husick and Mr. Carter and what they call the Action Leadership Team. They put together last year, one of their outcomes, they put together this brochure, and I'll just pass, there should be a copy for everybody there. It's just a brochure that outlines learning guidelines and gets into assessment. Just a really nice tool for parents and students to communicate some core beliefs. And also, it was neat just to hear them present and talk about it at their opening faculty meeting this year. The real neat way to also just unify the whole staff, in my opinion, just to bring everybody together on a core set of beliefs and guidelines, kind of just to help drive the ship. So congratulations, Chris and Brian, if you would extend, roughly how many committee members were involved in that?
About 8.
7 or 8, okay.
But the whole
Yeah.
staff over the course of a few years of work on that.
Very nice. Very well done. I also want to congratulate, I don't know how to pronounce her first name, is it Breen? Is that Breen? Breen Lyles? She was named a commended student in the National Merit Scholarship Program, which places that individual in the top 5% of more than 1.5 million students, so quite an accomplishment there. Also, our tech ed students, they continue to find ways to expose the kids in our program to some really neat hands-on learning experiences. I just found out a couple days ago they're bringing in, for their motorsports lab, they actually have an actual A.J. Foyt Indy car that they're bringing in on the 20th of October. So students are going to get a chance to see, experience some of the engineering and see it firsthand, how it's manufactured and how it's engineered. So anyone, I'm sure they wouldn't mind if you want to see this on site. That'll be the evening of October 20th. Let me know and I could send you more of the details. But I want to thank Mr. Meyer for making that contact and making that a possibility. Then just a couple of reminders. We invite the public. This is our homecoming week, and we're off to a really good start. We had a dodgeball tournament last night. I know some of the other high school administrators aren't here tonight because we have events going on every night, but I just want to invite the whole community. The parade will be at 5 o'clock. Prior to that, we'll have the pep assembly at about 1:15, and of course we have the game against Manitowoc on Friday night. And the last advertisement, a lot of you know I sell the winning Oktoberfest tickets for the Optimist Club. Just want to remind the public that that event is happening on October 14th. They continue to raise hundreds, thousands of dollars over the years for youth and for our community. So we invite and encourage people to participate and come on out. That doors will open at 5:30, and that's again at Stadium View on October 14th. So that's all I have. We had a great wedding celebration. I want to thank the board and everyone for revising the board meeting date. And I have some show and tell pictures that I passed around here. So thank you for making the revision too. Appreciate it.
No problem. Okay, we'll move on to J5, which is the action on Kirchmark Field and Clipstein Park. Last week, the village board had met and has approved a plan for moving forward with the remediation and what we're going to be doing at Clipstein Park. The village board approved, I believe, $1.2 million for doing things at the park. It's everything from doing the parking lots along Anderson Drive to moving the basketball court and new playground area, and also band shell, if you will, for potential down the road, I believe, but not. And then also the portion of Clipstein of Kirchmark Field. Now we one of the caveats in this discussion with the because the border of that's owned the baseball field is half the villages and half the school districts. The school district is partially responsible for remediation, just like we are doing right next to between the high school and Parkview right now. So we're our 50% of the just the remediation cost is about $315,000, I believe, and I think we have that worked into that those numbers that we had worked with the state on trying to get the exemption on paying for them remediation. Part of that, though, is not putting the field back in there. That creates another dilemma. We typically it's about another $345,000 to put the field back in. Of that, I mean, the school district, the motion that the village has made is that we would be splitting them costs. The school district with the village of about $172,500. This was gone through Public Works Committee and the village board, and has approved both those committees, and the village board has approved it to that extent already. The village board has left it up to us to whether we want this field back in there or not. I can tell you that I serve on the park board as well, and listening to all these gentlemen are going to tell you in a few minutes here the need for another baseball diamond. We do need another baseball diamond in the village. Right now, the last couple of years, because of the remediation problems and the closing down of Clipstein, came up with a short-term solution of putting the second baseball diamond out at Cornerstone and using one of those diamonds out there. And it's worked, but it's not the very best situation with distances that have to be traveled for our freshmen and JV teams, as well as in the evenings when AYB has different events going on, different games being played out there, and being out there with the adults and the alcohol that's being served out there as well. So I mean, there's some conflicting, things that are happening that we don't want to try to, put our youth in front of. But when we created the different parks for AYB and AGSA, so that we kept the adults out of the parks, where the kids are going to be in the alcohol out of those parks, that's one of the main reasons we did it. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people on this, and I know that we wanted to try to see what we can do here. I mean, or what we want to do. But I don't know if there's any discussions. Everybody's seen the maps that we have that were part of your packet, sort of a rendering of what we're going to do. I believe Rettler's here this evening as well to answer any questions that have helped put these together. And Allison is here also to, I don't know if you have anything?
Just unless you had questions. Rettler, the village retained Rettler to do the design and overall, not just really of the baseball field, but the entire capping strategy for what we need to do in terms of elevations and whatnot. So that's where that design comes in. That what you have in terms of those pricings, are there overall estimates to get the project done? And that's where we have not done final designs of anything, and we have not bid out the project. We would go into final design once we have direction from both boards in terms of the things that are going to be included and not, so that we're not doing an A and a B into final engineering type design drawings. And then from there, we would bid that out and then ideally start construction right away in spring.
Two things when I've been talking to other board members and stuff. I'm sorry I didn't get your name.
My name's Jeff. Jeff
Jeff.
Fowler.
One was brought up tonight. It's showing that the distances on the field are quite a bit more than what they are currently, or were currently, up to 340 feet in the outfield. I didn't know if we could retain that. I mean, is that doable on that diamond if it went back in there? 325?
We're actually gonna be a little shorter. The outfield was proposed at 305, dead center, and then 300 in left and right. Now, we could make left and right a little longer like it is now, if that's preferred. We kinda made just a more of an even outfield. Do you know what the existing distance in the center is?
The difference is, I think if you have the map that says 340, it's an earlier design, but it would require a retaining wall, and that would push the costs up. So it was one of the things to say, okay, how do we drive costs down? And then in order to get rid of the retaining wall, you have to pull the field in. Because keep in mind, we're putting at least 18 inches of soil over the top of all of this, so current elevations, as you know, are a foot and a half.
Yeah, the field's gonna be about 3 feet higher actually, because of all the contaminated from the community center project and from the park project. We have to put that up on the baseball field, and then we have to cap that with the clay. You see mountains of clay there now? So that clay is gonna cover that up, and we'll put topsoil on top of that. So it's gonna be about 3 feet higher in the outfield.
Another question that was brought up, and I'll just ask you real quick, because
That's fine.
Is there any way that it could be turned? The diamond turned? And the rationale behind that, Mr. Vandekreek brought this up, as far as utilizing the concession stand by the football field and the restrooms there already, if the home plate was where right field is now, and, you know, turning it and then not have as many foul balls on the school and that sort of thing.
It could potentially be turned. The only thing is there's a couple things. In baseball, orientation of the field is kind of important because of sun angles. And a typical orientation is either northeast or southeast. And this one's a southeast orientation. So for sun, it's a little better in this location versus if you flipped it around in the, what would that be? That would be a southwest orientation.
Northeast.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Oh, so I guess the sun orientation would be okay. We'd have to look at, as far as the outfield, you know, you'd be hitting up against the building. And also the grade does currently go from the home plate out. We wouldn't be able to do that in this orientation without major excavation and retaining walls, because we'd be fighting the grade up towards your school. So you'd have a field that would be high in the outfield sloping towards home plate. Now, if this is just a practice facility or a youth field, that would be okay, but typically the infield is the highest part and then it slopes out from there down to the outfield. But we could look at flipping it.
Just a question. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying we want to do
We
it
didn't really
100%,
look
but I
at
mean-
that scenario because of the grade and
But it's utilizing more facilities that we have already built
I
instead of
understand why
have somebody.
you're thinking about that, correct. Now, the restroom concession stand, and I'm just thinking out loud because I just heard this now, but the restroom concession stand at the football stadium is quite a bit higher elevation than that proposed parking lot or new existing parking lot is. So we'd have to think about how we're gonna get folks up there safely and accessible wise to make that happen too. So I'm not saying it can't be done, anything can be done, but that might be a challenge that we'd have to look at, getting people up through a staircase or a ramp or something.
In that $172,000 before we keep going here, does that include everything that's was currently there?
It would,
I mean,
have fence, it would have irrigation, block dugouts, bleachers. There would only be, pads for the batting cage. There's a garage out there now, or storage facility concessions. Those would come down, we would put pads in place of those, but new ones would not be built on top of those pads.
Yeah, the foundation, the footings and the foundations would be put in.
You'd have bullpens.
What about lights?
No light.
Lights already previously came down,
Mhm.
and they're, due to the poles rotting,
Mhm.
and in order to put there was issues putting them up the first time, and based on the cost just to do lights, and even assuming not having foundational issues to get them up, there really just wasn't enough nighttime usage to justify that additional cost, at least from the village perspective. I'm sure AYB probably feels that, you know.
I would think
differently,
that,
but-
I would think if you're gonna put a field in there and you're gonna have Babe Ruth games in there in the summer, you'd want to be able to play 2 games, and you can't do that in the summer without lights. It's impossible.
And I don't think they were not using a lot of them for nights. The primary place for Babe Ruth games would still be at Ashwaubenon, and everybody would still try to push more games at Ashwaubenon. It's really when high school baseball is going on and AYB season is starting that there's a lot more conflict, a lot more people trying to get on more fields than what we have. And then also, I think AYB would try to do more tournaments, and that would give another location to do that.
Or possibility for weekend tournaments and things like that, where we could play some games during the day out there.
But again, you can't play it at night.
No, during the day on the weekends.
Yeah.
Will this be the size required for that play? It would be?
For Babe Ruth level, but.
I don't know much about baseball. I just know at our last meeting, it was questionable the size of who it would accommodate and who it wouldn't, so I don't have an understanding of that.
trips, the kids that are just moving up into the bigger field, they're not really hitting out. You know, if you're varsity, there are probably bigger issues with it, but this field has always been a shorter field and had a taller fence that somewhat accommodated it, but probably not regulation per se in terms of what the ideal world is, but it wasn't before, and there's not enough room to do that regardless of what we do.
Based on similar freshman and JV fields around the area, you know, Green Bay East, Green Bay West, they play at Colburn, and they play at, I can't remember the one, Green Mile Park. It's a similar sized field. So the dimensions with regards to the level of play are fine. Yeah, for varsity, it wouldn't be you know, a field that would be, you know, up to the, you know, whatever the regulations are for WIAA. But for the purposes that we're looking to use it, the dimensions would suffice.
Rex, you have anything to add? No? Is this here for? Yes.
I do have something to add, in that the field itself, I don't think there's any notice needed after talking to people. That's not a problem. The problem is paying for it. It all comes down to money. And you have a problem and we have a problem. Altogether, it's $3 million in remediation costs for that whole area. It's a lot of money to borrow. I don't have a problem with borrowing, because you have levy limits and other things that control your borrowing. I don't have any problem borrowing the money. But if you could see forward, instead of paying it all at once, to pay us $20,000, $30,000 a year to help us pay off that part of the debt, that would certainly be helpful to us. I mean, you know, until the $172,000 is done.
So how much would you need now, Mike?
You know, we're gonna go out and borrow anyway. So what the increase of our yearly cost is for that extra borrowing, we would pay half and you would pay half for that part of the borrowing. And then, you know, but your half can be mitigated amongst years. Like every year you pay us so much until it's paid, because I know you have the levy limit problem. I've been there on that, so I know what you're talking about. But if we make a loan up and you have the payments and you just help us pay it off, it's good, because I can tell you right now, I'm doing budget, and Allison is too. This is not an easy year for us. The taxes are gonna go up in addition to the referendum because of the remediation. And then also we have some deficits in village operational budgets that we have to meet too. So I mean, it's a really difficult situation for us this year. The only advantage we have is we don't have the levy limits you have for borrowing. So we can borrow the money, but it would be nice if you would help yearly until it's paid off or whatever, to give so much per year, so it's paid off. Your half is.
What's the term, what period are you borrowing over?
We borrow usually 10 years.
10 years.
Keith, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, at first we borrowed $1 million to cover remediation costs. I'm not 100% sure the $1 million we've borrowed is gonna cover the upper field and our half without the baseball field. It could cover more. A lot of it depends. There's still questions about the grant that we have, the brownfield grant that's gonna help, hopefully, but there's still questions about that, whether we're gonna actually be able to collect on that. There's still questions about whether we have a causer or not, so we're working through all those issues. If costs come in where they're budgeted, I think we can handle the half of the $315,000, the half of the main field with that $1 million borrowing. Beyond that, if we would do something, as Mike's saying, we would put it into the 5-year maintenance plan or 10-year maintenance plan and just budget it, would be that much less that we'd have to do other projects. We've taken a lot of pride in keeping our buildings up to date, modern, clean, and I think we still would be able to accomplish that, but some of the other updating might be put off for some time, depending on how much we put in as far as regular debt service. The $1 million is all that we can borrow without a referendum, unless we go through, there's another option, the whole petitioning process, which will take months to do, and if it doesn't work, depending on what happens in the community, it might not work. So there is one option to borrow more. The option of the village borrowing is a much easier option. It's just a matter of, do we want to commit 20 or 30,000 out of our maintenance budget, or basically out of the district budget as a whole, and lock that in for the next 10 years? That's the question of how much do we want to block out for 10 years, and can we do that? Because we can't do the borrowing. As Mike said, with our levy limits, we're locked in.
Would that affect the start of the Colbert parking lot project next year?
I have taken the stance that we are not going to do anything that affects that project. We are going to
It's
do that
time to do it.
project this summer, and we have been working with Tom Schmidt so that we get those out to bid this fall yet, and we are going to do that project. That's a safety issue. That's high on our priority. It would affect some of the smaller projects that we do where we're updating buildings and trying to keep them so we don't have a large bill at the end where a building looks out of date, where we're doing the small things, and some cost-saving things like changing to LED lighting, like changing out fixtures that save water and things like that. It's gonna affect how fast we can do those things. We won't let it affect how we do things like roofs, parking lots, and major construction things that we need to do to keep our buildings up to date.
So I have a question for AYB. When Ashwaubenon was built, a lot of fundraising was done, a lot of in-kind labor and materials were provided. Allison mentioned that dugouts would be built, slabs would be poured. Is there any reason why AYB can't be funding that?
That's absolutely what we'll be doing. My plan is for Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball to, if this goes ahead, to go ahead and put up a concession stand, put up a storage unit, batting cages, to go ahead and take care of that part of the ancillary things that we can do, update the scoreboard if need be, those things that we need to finish out this project.
So can that be reduced from the dollar amount that, assuming that?
Including that, Allison?
Are you suggesting after the slabs and the dugouts are built, you would do the rest?
Right, yeah.
As opposed to doing the dugouts and the slabs
But
and
that's-
putting up the buildings?
If we
That's
wanna cut
included.
costs further, we could lay pads for the dugouts and then just put up fencing now. And then part of the issue is AYB has spent dollars out at Ashwaubenon and just doesn't have cash in hand to just put it
Sure.
towards the project. And frankly, some of these things can be cheaper because they've been able to leverage the labor side of
Mhm.
it. So we can switch those dugouts, and that would be a reduction from the number you see in the packet. Particularly in the dugouts, I think the original estimates were like $30,000
Yep.
per dugout, so they're very expensive. We could probably do that cheaper, but it's not gonna happen, you're not gonna see that at the end of next summer. But
Understandable.
it is what it is.
Right.
I think the preference would be to at least get the field there, work through the enhancements in the years to come.
Sure, I mean, that's how Ashwaubenon started.
That's how
Um,
Pioneer started.
It's how Pioneer
That's
started.
they all did, so I mean.
And we realize it's it's another field, but I don't know why this one would be any different. We have a lot of great parents, a lot of great volunteers. I carried a lot of bricks down at Ashwaubenon to build the buildings and the dugouts. So, I mean, I would take that number right off the top.
Some of the things, we have to lay the pads now, we have to do irrigation now because we don't want somebody digging into the cap later.
Right.
So
Sure.
that's strapping with us with some costs now up front.
Sure.
That had we our options or whatever, go lay a pad and put a foundation in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever it is, but we don't have that option without,
So even putting in a slab would be considered
because you'd have
the
some
cap?
foundation underneath that, and still have to dig it, we need to maintain that 18 inches. and
Okay.
Don't want anybody, that's what's there, that's what has to be there for DNR purposes.
Sure.
Right now, the recommendations from village board and what's coming forward right now and is not to put lights in there because that would have to be done now.
Sure, and you'd have to dig holes to put it in.
And you probably have to truck the material off-site.
Off-site. Mhm.
One of the other concerns I have, Mark, is just bidding environment. As we've seen with the buildings projects. And when we bid out the upper field that's being worked on right now, we had one bidder come in at budget, and the other bidders were 20+% above that one bidder. So I just want to make sure expectations are realistic, that the bidding environment is very tough for any construction right now. I hope these numbers are accurate, but we thought our numbers on the building projects were gonna be accurate, and you don't know, and when you only have one contractor come in at your budget and the other project, it just makes me a little nervous how accurate this is gonna be, or how realistic this is gonna be for the bidding environment, so we just need to be aware of that.
That's actually my question is, I hear the need for it. I hear we've had a short-term solution at Cornerstone. And I just want to know if there's a realistic start-stop, like what has to be done now, which is capping of the field. And typically, if you do everything at once, there's some cost savings, but I honestly don't know if that's the case here, because everything at once has really been a snowball effect in our district. We have a lot of things going on, and everything is more than we anticipated. And I don't have a sense as a board member of what we're not doing as a school district, because we are spending so much outside of our building walls right now. Our focus is so material and so external that I don't know if you can feel the snowball effect that we've had, and it just is. It's unfortunate, but is there a way that we can continue with this short term? Is there a realistic stopping point for this project is my real question.
I think we're there now. I mean, that part of the problem was it started at the football field, and that's what unearthed stuff, and then the DNR is really what's driving it. It's not the school districts, and certainly not the village, saying, oh, hey, let's go sample some soil and unearth these problems. It's just kind of kept going, and the DNR has pushed us to continue to go and take soil samples all the way until you can't find it anymore. So that's where we've identified those limits throughout our project, and then up to the edge, kind of a swooping line, if you will. But then we know we're done. We have where that problem is in our property, and then we're done. I know it's been painful. It's painful for everybody, and it's on somebody else's timeline in terms of what needs to be done. But
So then the question is, if the baseball field wasn't done right now, what is our loss by putting it off? So I understand that as soon as you dig down 18 inches, you just can't. So anything 18 inches or below has to be done now?
Well,
Or what
encapsulated, you have
percentage
to
of that
cap it.
project is that?
you have to have that cap
Right.
on there, and then you can't change that. And I kind of asked the same question, like, can we just add it over the top? But Jeff would be better to answer it. But
Okay.
in terms of what Jeff told me before, you have to remove more things in order to put it on. So you kind of waste some of the work. I mean, to you and I as civilians, if you will, you just add it up on the top, but that's not really the way it works.
Well, a lot of these things have foundations that have to go 4 feet down.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't do that now, you have to do it later. So that's gonna mess up the cap. So you kinda usually build from foundation up, right?
Right.
And if you go back later, it's gonna be additional costs, not only just, if there wasn't contaminated soil, it'd be additional cost because you're ripping things up that you did once already. But now that there's contaminated soils too, you'll have to remediate all that again, get into that whole process again of sampling and hauling away. And now what's kinda cool is we're keeping most of it on site by putting it in the outfield of the baseball field and burying it. Once we do that, we don't wanna rip the outfield up again and rip up all the irrigation. And it's sequencing problems if you do it later.
So the only
You
equivalent.
could do it, it's just gonna be very cumbersome and costly, you know.
So the equivalent I have in my head is, say I'm building a house, I can't afford to put a bathroom in the basement yet, so I plumb for it.
Right.
So there's a starting and
And
stopping.
that's kinda what we're doing with the.
So there's a starting and
that's what we're
stopping
doing with
point
the-
there.
Yeah, that's what we're doing with the press box, the batting cages, we're building that foundation.
So you pretty much have
So AYB
scaled
can
back
come
to the
back in
point.
later and finish them off.
But so we've pretty much scaled back to we've.
The only thing you could do is you could do the block dugouts later. We
So
could put
that's-
just the foundation in and put some fence up,
Uh-huh.
and then they could come back later and put the block up. You'd probably
That's-
save, I
Okay.
don't know, $20,000 or something.
Okay,
But-
that's
but,
what
you
I
know,
needed to know is
yeah.
how far back can you scale to make it efficient to do, I don't wanna say as little as you can now,
I think
but.
the goal when we all met on September 1st, the school and the village, was let's build a basic field to get us out of the junk, you know, the bad stuff, and allow these amenities to be put on later. So that's the scenario that we came up with here.
And one more question, who decides if there's alcohol served at Cornerstone, if that's our driving force?
It's not really served, it's that it's adult softball leagues and people are just carrying in, and that was why Cornerstone was established, that all the adults were brought out there away from kids. And now we're bringing the kids out there.
But there is this assumption as a community, we've said.
Yeah, they're not
we-
serving it, there's
Okay.
nobody selling it, it's just.
But we as a community could say, we have our baseball out here, so we don't want alcohol?
Potentially, yes.
I just want us to be aware of that, right? Because if that's our, part of our driving force, we have control over that as well.
And how big is that field out there?
300 on all corners,
300 over there.
300 around.
Okay, and what's this?
300.
So it's a little bit
Comparable.
It's very similar.
small,
Very similar.
smaller than this, okay.
No, it's very similar.
Oh, okay.
It's like- I mean, I don't know
Close
if
to the
it's
same.
different.
305, it's similar in size.
Okay.
Much different play of field though, because this has a grass infield for baseball versus the ones out there are more softball, adult softball.
Okay,
And the need for a mound, pitching mound.
okay.
Yeah, good.
Raise that up.
So an option for the school district would be to pay it off over like 10 years? That would be comfortable for the village versus doing it as
Take
shorter?
it back there, but I think that's.
It isn't.
Do
Well,
that
sure,
where-
man.
It would make sense for us to try and just combine that bonding, we'll bid out the entire project, do the whole bonding, and then just attribute a portion of that payment back to the school district. We did not talk about that, that portion of it
Okay.
in terms of village board, but we can also, right now, I think we're looking for the direction of that financial commitment overall. We can work out details in terms of what
Okay.
money you would need once we actually get to the bonding portion of it, because right now, once we bid it and everything else, get it designed and bid, then we'll have real numbers of what this is gonna cost. We have fairly conservative numbers, estimates before you right now. And so really, we're looking for, we wanna go into design, is it gonna include a baseball diamond or is it not? But I think it makes sense to maximize what the dollars you have available, your construction will be done, you'll know some of your final numbers on the rest of your project. Gives us a little time to work through the other known causes section of things.
I think that, from my perspective on it, and I explained our dilemma as far as funding this to the village board the other night as well, last week, I should say. And, I mean, we don't know what that final number is gonna be on what that note is that we got through the, you know, for the remediation that we have right now. I mean, I would like to see us, maximize that note, I guess, to the fullest if we can, and then fund whatever remaining portion of that through the village.
And I did talk to trustees, and I think they're open because they realize the borrowing problems you have, or we would not have gone along with the referendum. So we realize and understand the levy problems that exist, and I think this is one way that it wouldn't impact you $176,000 in 1 year.
Right. But I think that we have to, I like the idea of it's a three-way street, I believe. I think that if we get a bare bones field out there, that we cut our villages and school districts proportion down to a bare bones field for right now, until we can all get on our feet a little bit more after this remediation. And hopefully, you know, they can come up with some donations as well to put in some dugouts and some concession stands as we go. I mean, it's a good, I mean, community comes together to do things like this, and I just, right now is a most terrible time for this project if we had one to pick. But I think that it's a well-deserved project. I like it. It's been in Ashwaubenon since I was a boy. I hate to see it go.
Allison, as far as the field is concerned, is that gonna be sodded, all sodded, grass?
Versus seed or?
Versus seed?
It's gonna be seeded.
Seed?
It's gonna be seeded, you're not sodding the infield?
The infield would be sodded, but the outfield would be seeded.
Irrigation on the infield and outfield?
Yep.
New mesh fencing all the way around? New mesh fencing?
Galvanized, yeah. 24-foot tall backstop, 8-foot line fence, 12-foot outfield fence. A mound system, pitcher's mound out of clay. What am I missing?
Right now?
Huh?
Right now.
We're not doing right now. We're trying to cut it back.
So when would you anticipate this field being ready?
If we built it next spring, we get great bids and we build it next year, it's probably a year out from that. So probably play on it in 17.
So the
Fall
new,
of 17.
the new concrete plaza on the backside, is that part of this also?
Yes.
That's not in the base, separate 172 number for the baseball diamond, that's also in the base grass, just a grass field plan with that, because we still have to deal with that edge. There's less concrete in a base model, in terms of like where the bleacher area is and whatnot, but, in talking with Keith and Brian, I think the school liked that idea. The stairs in there kind of provides a little bit of an outdoor classroom space, and just a little bit of a sidewalk.
Just seems like an awful lot considering it's not being sodded. We put in that Pioneer.
Do we need numbers right now, I guess? I'm gonna ask that to you. I mean, do you need numbers from us as far, because we don't even know what these numbers are gonna be? I mean, if we say we're willing to spend $400,000, I mean, $315,000 plus another $100,000 or something like that. I mean, because we don't. I mean, I heard numbers of $60,000 for dugouts. I heard $20,000 for dugouts.
Well, if you don't do the dugouts, you know, you'd still, if you go down to the base, you still have the foundations in there, and then you need the fencing that's in there, you still need a bench in there, there's still other things.
Yeah, you can put a simple slab of concrete in and some fence.
But we don't know the number is what I'm getting at. It's not 172,000, then it's something less than that.
If we do that scenario, right?
Right.
It just
I mean,
depends what you want.
You can give us a ballpark. I mean, the other thing that's within these numbers is we're trying to be conservative because of the issues we've had. I mean, the village is storing clay on site. We took it out of our ponds. We have another pond we're digging, so we think they'll have adequate clay that we're not trying to find fill. And I think that was one of the issues with your bidding process for your own project, was where that fill was coming from. That's a huge number. The other thing that we were talking with the DNR, and they are agreeable to leaving, there are certain soils that are above a TSCA level or whatever, I don't really know what I'm talking about when I say that, but that are highly toxic, let's just say. And above a certain threshold, they need to be trucked off site. The DNR is saying, well, that's fine, you can leave it on site and just cap it, but you can't touch it, you can't move it. Where there's a lot of soils that are contaminated that we can move, like we've talked about being able to take other soils, portions of the site and spread it across. It's just that ones that are of this certain level, you cannot do that. The problem we're looking at is until you are out there and digging and we get some elevations and final design, some of that lies right up against the school, and you're not gonna be able to scoop that away if you need to, you know, drop that elevation so that you can fit 18 inches of cap on top. There might be some that still has to come out of there and then be trucked off site. But right now, we have kind of the worst case scenario number in there, because we want to be conservative, but we think we can get through some final design and work through further in terms of what would need to be trucked out, then we'll know those things. But we won't know those until we do final design. And then, again, you'll get a more final number even once you actually bid it. But
Mark, we asked to go 50/50. So right now, it's 340-some thousand. If it ends up being 300,000, we're not gonna charge you 172, we're gonna drop you to 150. So, and we're looking for the most conservative way to do it, because believe me, we don't have the money to throw around either. So, I think if your commitment to fund up to 172,000 probably will be less if we do some of the things that were just mentioned. That would be the top number that we would have. And that's a conservative number. So anything we find below that to save money, we would certainly do.
I think what I'm hearing from you is eliminate the dugouts, at least cut back down on that. I think we're at a loss of what other things could go on there. I mean, potentially irrigation could come out of there, but that's not something they can add later.
You don't wanna do that.
Right.
What happened to the irrigation in the Cliffside Park? It just got buried?
Well, we can pull that out, if you will, but there may be some issues in terms of it's in contaminated soil potentially.
How long
So
ago
we
was
did
it-
talk to them.
How long ago was that put in?
7, 8 years maybe?
It's not possible to put extenders on and utilize the existing?
It is, but you'd have to find it.
Yeah.
No, it's
Pile of
not,
clay.
Brian, because if
Okay.
there
Just-
was,
just
if
curious.
Soil, then you
there
can
was
puncture
a,
the
if there was a
fabric.
leak or anything in the current sprinkler system, then
Yeah.
you'd still have to go down and fix it. So you need to be able to have access to whatever sprinkler system you're actually using. So basically, what's there now has to be abandoned. You might be able to take the heads out
Okay.
and reuse the heads,
I see.
but that's about it. The lines are just basically need to be abandoned.
You're talking a small amount of money there. Irrigation is
I
the
was just
biggest
curious,
part of this
yeah.
thing. It's never, it's definitely needed, but it's not a big cost.
Who paid for that originally?
AYB.
I think AYB did.
AYB.
Well, I tend to agree with Mark that it would be a real shame to not have a field there if we can figure out a way to do this at an economical way. And I know I push it back to AYB. I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, and I know it can be done, and I know that parents and volunteers will step up to help. So I guess I would encourage and suggest that we do go to the bare bones method and do the work now that can be done as prior to the capping or as the capping is being done, so that we can preserve a field there.
Okay, so are you making a motion, Brian?
I will make a motion that we approve the 50% matching with the village. Do we need to place a dollar amount upon that? Or do we just need to say we're going to meet it 50-50?
No, I think we need
Bare
a dollar
bones?
amount on
Yeah, what I would recommend is that you put the cap in, and maybe go with the 172,500, so if
As the
bids come in
max.
above that, it's gotta come back to you then
Sure.
to approve if you're gonna go over that. So
Okay.
that would be my recommendation.
So place it, so we'll have that capped to 172,000. And that would be
Okay.
the motion.
Good motion, do we have a second?
And I'll second it, but I just wanna make a comment too on that new concrete plaza. Can we do like a fundraising brick naming rights like we've done in other areas? Is that
Anything is possible,
something to
yes.
look at?
Can I ask a question about clarification? So you're up to 172,000, paying it in installments by year, or paying it every?
Over time.
Well, I
Over-
think, yeah, I think we should
Should we
clarify
clarify that
we-
in the motion? So the 172,000, and you suggested 10 years, is that the outer
Well, that's our
limit?
borrowing.
Well,
That's your borrowing plan, so over the 10-year period or less?
I don't think we know at this time what
Yeah.
the borrowing would be, so we can just come back to you with that if you prefer.
Okay.
Because you're still gonna have to try and max out what you have first
Right.
to know that number.
So it might be something less than that. I don't know, Jennifer, do you have that? You'll wordsmith it so it sounds like it makes sense?
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any other comments? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Wonderful. We'll give you a minute to get out.
I can tell you stories about building that out at Ashwaubenon.
And raise money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Potter.
See you, Jeff. Thank you.
Rex, I like the pickleball courts.
Should be something.
What's that?
Rex, I like the pickleball courts.
So do I. So do I.
Fun.
I'm hoping that they continue to be popular.
It was crowded, I was there last week, I couldn't believe all the people.
The way some nights look, we should have built like 12 instead of the 6.
Oh, I know, so
Yep.
much fun.
I just got a message today about is there a fall league? Is that, maybe it's not, is
They're
it,
trying to get one.
is that right? Yeah, I saw a message today about that.
That's where we need lights.
Okay. We got a few other projects on the front burner, so. We'll move on to discussion item 1, Ashwaubenon app. Bradley.
Well, Ashwaubenon Schools, there's an app for that now. We've developed one with our partner, one of our vendors, School Messenger, who does our rapid communication system for texting and alerting parents of emergencies and other stuff. So part of that deal in negotiating with them was to develop a mobile app for us. So I'm just going to kind of take you and do a quick little tour of what it looks like. It's available on the Apple App Store along with Google's Play Store. And what we'll do is to roll this out, we'll this week I'll let staff know it's out there, kind of do a soft rollout with them. And then maybe by the end of the week or early next week, we'll blast it out to parents and put it in the school newsletters and all that fun stuff. So here's the app. And what it basically does is grabs all of the, we determine what's the most high interest information that parents look at and want to know. So this is what we came up with based on our studies of that. First thing that you can do is you can go into a settings, and let's say that you don't really care about all of the schools, what's going on. I've got a student maybe just at, we'll do Cormier, Parkview, and Pioneer. So I can kind of tailor the app to that so that when I go in to look at, let's say the calendar, for example. This takes a little bit of time to load. I found the calendar. I'm going to see if they can speed it up at all. What it'll do then is it'll just bring up the events for those schools that I picked, or those schools that my kids are in, so to speak. So that's the calendar app. We'll bop over some other ones here. Our news app. It grabs all this stuff off of our website. So there's really no double entry of stuff that we have to do, which is nice. It's all kind of automatic. It scrapes our website for the information. So that's from our school announcements on the website. If you go into the schools, it gives you some contact information along with interactive map, links to the website, links to the school's contact and hours website page. You'll see a lot of it goes, just points to the website. Again, that avoids any double maintenance that you have to do. Let's go and payments. I'll do a little plug here for our new online payment of fees. So that's where this goes, to that website. Parents, if you haven't paid your fees, please do so soon, as we keep sending you invoices on that. School board, look at this. Hey, check this out. It's got your meetings on there, but even better than that, it's got your pictures and your contact information. You might not like that part, but so it's got your emails and your home and work phone numbers. Also has the meeting list of meeting dates there. What else? We saw settings. We saw the calendar. Social media. This will go to all of our various Facebook pages, Twitter sites. Here's the school district's page coming up. So again, it gives all this information to parents basically in their hand on their mobile device, whether it's a smartphone or an iPad. You go to Twitter, look at all the stuff Nick's been twittering at the high school, especially with homecoming now. All kinds of fun stuff. And again, it's all formatted for the mobile devices. So not like, you can go to our website with a Safari browser on your mobile device, but you maybe have found that it's a little bit tricky to navigate that sometimes. The other piece of the social thing is our video site. If you want to watch yourselves on TV, hopefully, they could bring up the meeting right now. So watch yourselves live. All right, and then just some other highlights are Power School. There's a mobile app for Power School for both parents and students. So that's where that goes. It goes to the store if they haven't downloaded the app. Notifications is kind of cool. That's just another way we can let people know of a snow day or emergency. So we'll use that along with our texting and our emailing. It'll push it right to the app.
Speaking of that, Brad, how
Yeah.
come I get 2 of them every time that something happens?
2 emails?
Text messages, emails, phone calls, I don't care. It's 2 of
Yeah.
everything.
Well, we like you so much.
Yeah.
I know I'll have to look at School Messenger and see what's in there for you.
Okay.
Okay. It should eliminate any duplicate emails, so I'll check it out.
This thing starts buzzing like it's gonna blow
I
up.
thought we took you off the list a while back after your kids left. So anyway, notifications is nice because if there is something, it'll pop up right on your phone. Depending how you have your alerts set up, it'll pop up on your phone. If your phone is in sleep mode and you've programmed your phone to wake up on notifications, it'll actually do that. A couple other things is the directory. Basically just a staff directory. We originally were trying to get them to put the phone numbers in here, but on second, thinking of it a little bit more thoroughly, we'd rather just have emails because we don't want parents calling teachers during the school day with just clicking a little phone number. So let's see what else we got. Oh, menus. That's a hot item. They can either go to the food services website, or better yet, they can go and bring up what's for lunch that day, or I believe it goes till tomorrow also. That'll get a lot of hits. Athletics, again, that goes to our athletic, both the websites and the Nick's Twitter account for the Jaguar stuff. And then finally, transportation goes to our transportation busing page on the website. So, it's available now, and like I said, we just haven't announced it yet, and we'll do that throughout this week and probably through the upcoming week also. We'll have links for it on our website and stuff like that too. Any questions? It's free.
Can you just go back, how did it happen? I'm just curious how we created this.
How what?
How did you create this?
They did. We just told them what we wanted for content, and we did a lot of School Messenger. That's who does our emailing and texting system and that stuff. Just one of the products that they offer.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Any questions?
Cool.
Nice.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. We'll move on to discussion item number 2, referendum projects. Big thing this week, Thursday, 8:45, we have our groundbreaking for the pool and auditorium. Everybody is welcome to attend. I guess they want the school board and village board to be turning first shovels of dirt here. So, I mean, if you're around and can make it, it'd be great. Second thing is last week, also at our village board meeting, we approved a couple different change orders with what's happening with the referendum projects that, and it's good news. Poolworks changed their contract. We changed it from a subcontractor to from a contractor to a subcontractor, and it saved us about $104,000. And we also approved the fire protection system bid, and right now the overages, instead of being $511,000 over our referendum price, we're only $407,000. Now, the village has said that they were going to be taking care of that overages through some the night of service agreement money that we get from them, and over the next couple of years, so that we don't have to worry about that right now. Donations are coming in very well. Over $200,000 has been donated to different aspects of the program so far. There's a lot of other things that are coming forward that I think that they're going to push them numbers up even higher for these donations. It's nothing as far as naming rights go for the facilities. We didn't feel that was in the right interest, but people have really stepped up from seat licensing, buying a seat if you wanted to, either the pool or the auditorium, to all kinds of other stuff. I mean, scoreboards in the pool and that sort of thing. So, I mean, they're really pushing on it. There's several people out there that are really pushing, so.
Just want to add, in addition to the village's contributions, you guys are, the school board is paying for quite a bit as well with pool covers, the pool evacuator system,
Yeah.
and LED lighting, so anybody watching as well knows that it's really a great partnership. Both
Yeah.
sides are doing what they can here.
Mike?
So you don't worry about the overage between the United Service Agreement and the contingency fund in the referendum project. We have $1.1 million to cover any overage. And there is a $200,000 donation that's supposed to be coming in very shortly. That'll add to that, so you're up to $1.3 million. And frankly, if it goes over that much, I'll have to off the bridge, but I'm sure it's not going to be to that extent. So, some of that will not be a problem, but it's important to note that when I talk to Doug about the construction project, by next April, we'll pretty well know if there's going to be any huge problems, because he said most of the areas where you would find problems will be done. So you'll know sometime next spring.
So Mike, someone donated specifically to cover overages? Or
Well, I sort of solicited a donation that we have that could cover overages, but their names will be prominently ensconced in every plaque we have, but yes, basically.
Okay.
We might give them a plaque in a room or something, but basically they're doing it so we can take care of this.
Nice.
So it wasn't, is there any other questions anybody has? I mean, I hope that everybody can make it on Thursday, so.
Thursday,
Where exactly
8:45.
are we gonna start?
The village is gonna have a tent set up there in the back, Long Ridge Road, behind, I think towards the auditorium is where it's
Yes.
gonna be.
Gathering at 8:30, 45 is the groundbreaking.
On Thursday.
Any other questions? Okay, good. We'll move on to number 3, legislative update. Well, I guess that's mine again. I've been, as many of you know, I've serve on the Legislative Resolutions Committee at WASB, and we had our first meetings last Friday and Saturday. And I know many of you have been to the delegate assemblies and stuff down there at the school board convention, but when they get to people submit these proposals and everything, you don't really realize what they go through to put them forward. There's about 30 people in a room that are different school districts and everything from all different backgrounds, and we had the most resolutions we've had in, I guess, quite a while, 10 years at least. Twice as many as last year, for sure. And they get you pretty familiar with the resolutions so that you'd understand them and everything right at the first day. I mean, it takes a whole day just to get, into them and everything. And the second day, they break down into 4 different groups, and it's got to pass 3 of the 4 groups to get into a resolution. And you get into some pretty good discussions on the different projects. And, some of the things that they're talking about in these resolutions, I mean, if we're talking about some of the things that we talk about here, and if these other districts are having the problems that they say that they're having in trying to create these things, they've got some major problems. So, I mean, I totally have a different respect for what they're trying to push through right now after hearing and going through this so far. But there's another November meeting it's a 2-day meeting that I'll be attending besides this. And then the delegate assembly on Tuesday of the meeting as well. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. The WSB pays for everything for us too, so I mean, it's not something that Ashwaubenon is paying for. All the expenses and stuff like that. So
So will you be at the delegate assembly as a rep from here or as, at the front as a
Both.
rep from there? For both?
Both.
Okay. Nice, thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, well, for lots of reasons, but thank
Yeah.
you.
But there's a lot of them. I mean, right now, we had 31 resolutions, and we scaled it back to somewhere around 19 right now, either combining several of them together to eliminating some of them.
How many do you think would actually pass?
I won't vote. See, you have to, when you start this process, it's not, you don't debate them, you know, based on your school district needs. It's worthy, it's only if they're worthy of debate.
Okay.
And until it gets to the point of the delegate assembly, you have to look at it in a totally different. There's some that I won't support just based on what they are doing and everything, but they're worthy of debate anyway, so. But it's when we get to the final whatever number it is, we'll bring them back and make sure we get it, you guys can see what they are. So, okay. Let's keep them moving here, I guess, to action items. J1, District Continuous Improvement Plan.
Okay, before I do that, I just wanted to say thank you for your willingness to serve on that, Mark. Not only just the time you put in there, but the time it takes away from work and everything else. And you know how I feel. I mean, the fact that you have that level of experience and the viewpoint from the village and the school, I read those resolutions over the years, and there's everything in the world in there. And from WASB's perspective, they're representing every school district in the state, so that you have to start that way. You have to start so broad. And
I'm going to give you one
Yeah.
quick thing. I couldn't believe the amount of school districts there are that don't receive any aid.
don't receive any.
I always thought it was just,
I thought there was a couple, like Gibraltar or something like that, but a lot of those northern school districts they receive no aid, and they have over 50% free and reduced lunch. And they have, some of them are over 750 square miles.
And the challenges they have often in those areas of trying to pass a referendum when their buildings are really falling down. A majority of the people, in some cases, they're retirement homes.
Yeah.
So they're not supportive, they're absentee ballot. They don't want their cottage, tax to go up, right? I mean, it's a real challenge. There's some unique.
So that's what causes it, is the high property values of
Yep.
cottages or camps or things?
Yep.
Hmm. Interesting.
Well, what I have in front of you is just backpedaling to our board workshop, taking the input that you've given us. We've put together just a refined version of the district goals, but we wanted to bring this back to you and bring it back for formal approval. And the bottom line is we have 100% expectation for students to meet or exceed grade level expectations in reading and math. But then at another level, drilling down at all the grade levels, setting other target measures. And we used what we currently have available with MAP, with the IRI scores, with our ACT scores. Those are some of the target measures that we have that we start with. And over time, what I see happening is we want to continue to move that arrow to the right? We want to continue to increase those performances. We have on October 1st, on Thursday, that will be our first quarterly meeting. So Melissa will be here working with the entire administrative team. And we're moving forward now, setting goals in the various departments that we talked about. Be it food service, HR, and with the whole idea of trying to streamline and focus our energy more on our main mission, and student achievement and student growth. So I guess I'll just open it up for questions if you have questions, or Jill could jump in, or just wanted you to see in a nutshell where we are. And obviously it'll be an ongoing work in progress for us. And in some areas, it's really going to be a learning experience for us. Some of the departments aren't accustomed to measurable, specific goals That's a new experience. So by the end of, by the beginning of October, we're asking people now to have the draft done, believe by September, the end of this month. First draft, so Melissa now will meet with individuals and we'll keep moving forward. So I also see us over time looking at our progress more frequently. If you think of the last 3-4 years, we've done it at the beginning, maybe a mid-year report from administration, and then we look at it at the end, and then we start all over again. More frequent monitoring and adjustments, we know that's the right thing to do. We're just all trying to figure out, and with their leadership, how's the best way to do that, continue to move us forward. And to set the bar high so that we're moving all students. And we know realistically they won't all 100% will not achieve that. But as Jill and I were talking earlier this week, what's the alternative? We certainly want to have that mindset and that goal. Any parent wants their child, that would be their ultimate goal. So I hope we represented your input from both sides of the fence here on that, with a 100% concept, but also with, okay, this is where we are right now. Again, the goal is to move every child in this district forward. And some will move at different rates, obviously, than others. So.
I have two questions. One is
Absolutely.
with regard to the ACT, and I think this is out there, although I don't have it in my head. So I think ACT could probably tell us what the score should be if you are going to succeed and graduate in 4 years from college.
22.
22.
22, okay.
So that across the board?
Yes, in reading and in math.
Okay, so the equivalent for me would be to say that, I don't know if it's mean, because I don't know that terminology anymore, it's not in front of my head, but anyway, so that would be our quote 100% for ACT is 22.
22, yes.
I don't see that mentioned anywhere, and 0.1% seems like not a huge stretch when I look at the equivalence of going like 50 to 65 or 48 to 60 or 61 to 90. I mean, this seems like this does not.
There was a huge discussion around that when they were at the high school dad retreat, looking at, they're so uncertain, they've never done this before, having a full junior class take that assessment before, and then when you pull the entire state together, sometimes that mean will change, and so they were really tentative on maybe next year's mean for Wisconsin will be 21.3, or it could be 19.1. That will fluctuate based on the students in Wisconsin and how they perform on the test. And so we wanted to be very careful just this year to see what that actually looked like.
So is 22 going to remain a constant no matter how we
Yes.
perform in the state?
Right, because we're looking at what we did within the state. I mean, it's tricky to think about, but they were very nervous because next year the number could be very different and our students could score at a 20. And so they said based off of that current group of kids, we just want to be very cautious before we jump in and say the 22. I was ready to say, no, we need to do the 22. But they want to try just moving slowly because they said it's a big deal to move just 1/10 of a point.
So if you don't, if you set it at 22 and you don't achieve it, we're not going to take anything away from you for not achieving the goal.
Correct. That's true. But we had that discussion around SLOs too, student learning objectives. When teachers set goals within a classroom, they're always very hesitant to set that goal high just in case they don't reach it. So it's a whole different mindset that we have to get to.
But if we, I agree with what you just said.
We want to model for our students what we expect of them. Do we want to tell them to set a safe goal, or do we want to tell them to do what they're supposed to do?
We used to say, we used to say it was 100%. We want to achieve 100%.
I'm going to start growling up here. I need a break.
Huh?
We can certainly do that. We can go back to the high school and say, let's take a risk and let's be brave.
So what is our average now?
It was 21.1
21.1?
in math, and it was 20.5.
Okay. So you're looking at 1/10 of it.
Yes.
So each year you're looking at
Well, we
we
may jump higher next year. They were just very tentative because we've never assessed a full junior class before. And the state has never assessed all juniors before.
I would envision if they continue doing this and giving it ACT, teachers are gonna be better prepared to prepare the students for this test also, right?
Well, the one thing that the department is doing is ACT does a phenomenal job of saying, if your students scored at a 20, and you want to get your students to a 22, ensure that within your curriculum are these points. And so we're gonna continue to do that. The departments already have that. And so they're looking at, in the math department, they're aligning to make sure that our curriculum covers what the national board says, what ACT says.
So if you were to look at it, just focusing on math and looking at the ACT portion of the math test, have you identified what level of math within the high school that you'd have to achieve in order to get a 22 theoretically
Yes.
on the test?
Well, we need to get all of our students through Algebra 2, which is Math 3. That's what we look at. The high school math department has got this all calculated because they are into numbers. The higher you go, if you get into Math 4 or Math 5, they have predictors of how you're going to do in the ACT based off of how far you get through the curriculum.
So math 3 being math 1, 2.
Math 2 is geometry.
Okay, but you've got math 1, math 2, math 3. You've got a pretty big chunk of kids that are, and I'll admit my daughter included, who's not a math whiz, is if she gets even to math 1, she'll be lucky because she's down in that other group. So I would think that based on how many kids you have in each class, again, you should theoretically be able to come I mean, it's nice to say 22, but if 50% of your kids are below math 1, you're never going to get there. So I think you have to identify what percentage of your high school kids fall into each one of those categories, which would then sort of tell you whether your objective is achievable or not achievable.
One thing you gotta remember though is, these are juniors taking this test, so they'll have had 2 years of math already.
But you only have to take 2 years of math. So in my daughter's
Right.
case, she could take, okay, but she could take in her case, she's going to take the first 3, which still doesn't even get her to math 1 probably.
Well, if you take the first 3 at the high school, technically you could take Algebra 1A and 1B, which is algebra. They use that as support for kids that really struggle within algebra. They give them that full year of
And then
algebra
geometry.
to get them there, and that's a 2-credit course. And then they get to Math 2, which could be geometry, so you could essentially get to Math 2. But we want all of our kids to start as freshmen. We want them all to take algebra, which is Math 1. That's our goal. It's a lofty goal, but that is really what we're shooting for. And so we have some of those safety nets in place, whether it's a foundations course or whether it's the Math 1.
Is there 4? But isn't there's below math 1, are there not 4 levels?
There's foundation A and foundation B.
And then
the
there's
algebra 1
math
and
1? There's 2 in there. Okay.
But it's a struggle. Math is an area that we continue to look at very carefully. And we want to make sure that we get our students to Algebra 2. And as you as a parent, you know that sometimes that Algebra 2 is a very difficult course. That's probably the Math 3 is the one we hear the most concern about from our parents. And so we're looking at instructional practice. We're looking at ways that we can bring the curriculum to kids and help them be more successful. But it's a mindset that we have to help kids get past too, because there's a lot of kids that enter high school thinking they can't do math at all.
And that's an eye-opener for me as a parent because, my 2 older sons are in the math honors program and math comes easy to them. But with my daughter coming into the program who doesn't get math, I'm actually kind of surprised at the information that is even in the lower math classes, because in some cases I look at that and go, yeah, it would really be nice if she got to know some of that stuff, but in a lot of cases it's the basic math of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. In getting to know that information, very well versed in that, I'm not so concerned about geometry and algebra at this point. I'm more concerned that she's able to balance her checkbook and do basic math skills that all of us have to do on a regular basis, And, I mean, I was great in math in high school and into college with calculus and trigonometry as well. That's long gone, and now I sit and stare at the book, and I couldn't figure out how to do any of that stuff unless I dug back into it again. So I guess my point is there are a lot of kids out there that I think we need to be careful of, that we're not losing them in things that they're never going to probably use. Now, granted, we're saying, well, they need a 22 on the ACT to be successful. I guess I question in what, because I can think of a lot of kids that I went to school with that could run circles around you when it came to measuring board feet and doing things with, practical things that they're going to do on a daily basis, and didn't know the first thing about algebra or trigonometry or any of the rest of it. So, hopefully we're not going to lose sight of that foundation math that everybody uses on a daily basis in an attempt to try to get kids up into an Algebra 3 level, which, again, I can appreciate just looking at my daughter's struggles at this stage, that if she ever gets there, it would be a miracle. And to be real honest with you, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned that she knows what I would consider what was basic math, I guess, in the day.
And what the ACT has done, is they've done that longitudinal study, and that magic number of 22 is what they've done. They've looked at kids that have taken the ACT over time, and then when they get into their freshman class at college, if you have a 22, the predictor is if you have a 22 on the ACT in math, you'll score a C or better when you get into your college math course. And that's, again, it's all just looking at statistics and following students and keeping that data going. But we've had that discussion with the math department. What do we believe is essential for our students to be successful? And there are kids that aren't going to go to college, or that necessarily don't need that Algebra 2 piece. But again, we look at what the Wisconsin standards look at and what we're assessed at, and that's Algebra 2. That's what we have to exit our high school students with.
Would it be possible, I know when we get to future board topics, we rarely throw something out there, but if we could as a board have an appreciation for an ACT score and what that really means, I've heard it, but it's like they can look at reading level and tell you what career you're going into and what your reading level needs to be. And it makes such total sense, and what's really ironic is it's different than what you would expect. Someone who might have a trade who has to read manuals might have to have a much higher reading level than someone else, and it's just interesting information, and it gives you something behind a number. Because right now these numbers feel like a feather in our cap, and it's more than, it's something very different than that. Because I understand what you're saying too, but there's just a lot of information behind that number, and why do I want to push more than a 0.1%? It's like saying I want,
We could bring in high school guidance, and we could also down it as a board presentation and talk about what those numbers mean, where the magic comes from.
But I think the ACT people would do that
I was
for
going to
us.
say the same thing. I think ACT would probably be
I
another
think they
resource
would,
to do
or
that
maybe they have
alongside.
something that a resource we could use. I
We
bet
had
they would.
we had a rep from ACT that came in and met with parents at the end of their 8th grade year to talk about the Explore test.
Mhm.
He's no longer working within that component, but I'm sure we could find someone. They tend to be a little dry, but we can.
Do you ever want a key special presentation?
I know that's not there.
Wow.
I know.
That was low.
So anyway, we will continue to revisit that with Matt. There was a really hard discussion around the table with the high school data team and talking about how we move, how much we move. And they were just very tentative. They said, let's just look at 1 year and see what we get.
And then here's the other question, because this was done with Studer, right?
Yes.
So what is on here because they stretched us? What wouldn't have been on here without them?
Do
you know what I'm asking?
It's not necessarily stretching us. What it's doing, it's helping us narrow our focus. Because when we come to the board level now, we'll be talking to you about students in grades 5, 8, and then at the high school level. Before, we were looking at we will still be responsible as a district at looking at every grade level, but we will be focusing on specific grade levels to come and talk to you about. And that is helping us narrow our focus for you. Because we've tried to do so many things that we've kind of lost sight of the reading and the math piece and how critical that is to student learning. And so Studer is saying to us, now, we're going to narrow that focus as a board, as a district. You're going to report to the board level on these 3 grade levels, but you're going to be responsible to everybody. But that's their way of saying, okay, district, you're gonna start focusing here. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and I guess I look toward Minnesota too as we decide what to do with this, with Studer. Do you feel growth from this adventure? Do you feel is it a wise investment for us? And maybe you can't answer this now, maybe it's the next go around, but I'm curious. Because when I read this, it didn't look so novel to me. No offense. You know, I mean, it's some, and maybe there's just so much that can't be displayed here, but.
Jenny, I
don't
think,
know.
and honestly, we're curious also. That's one of the reasons we had the discussion with them about the 1 year versus a 3-year contract, and until you really try something on. I mean, we went and talked to other school districts. I called other administrators, and they heard my feedback after talking to other principals that have been in the system for multiple years. So, and some of that was compacting what they do. And I made sure, Melissa, I was transparent. We're gonna pay, we're gonna spend time. Their time is very valuable, everybody in this room. What they do, we want the bang for the buck.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, I do know enough now, the more I learn about it, it is going to take time, because we haven't talked about even the survey part of this with staff or input. It takes time to get that out there, and Melissa is trying to be very respectful. One of the things I talked to her about is, right now it's on the plate for a building level principal with Teachscape and all of these mandates. You can't do this and tip people right over. I mean, focus, and that's back to what Jill said. That's what they're helping us do, to focus even more. It's been on our plate for the last 2 or 3 years, talking about the book focus. But all things aside, there are mandates that we have to do. We don't have a choice. And right now, the whole Teachscape issue is one that's on the plate that we're keeping a positive outlook and attitude about this at the state level. There's probably going to be decisions that will be made there in about the next month or so. So I don't know, hope we're answering your question. Jill's right, it's sort of like the rubber band. When an individual teacher or anyone sets a goal, we're trying to grow the mindset that shoot high, and you're not going to be penalized for taking a risk if you don't get to the top of the mountain. The whole idea is to move this way, to move the ball. So whatever number you put on the piece of paper, you know, I understand more why the high school mindset is where they are with that ACT. And that's the first year the entire school took the ACT. I was impressed though. Jill, do you remember what was the math score that the collective high school, it was
just a little bit lower than we were.
Yeah.
We scored higher than the state level.
Yeah, which was,
By 0.3 of a point, I think.
we were a little surprised at that fact, so.
Out of respect for Keith, I just want to say, as a fellow accountant,
No.
you can be successful. You can be successful getting an 18 on this ACT test as an accountant. Just want you to know that. Don't need no higher end. Don't need no higher end math to be an accountant.
Wow.
You know, and I kind of wonder, you know, it's like, I think back when my kids were in high school, we didn't have that data. We didn't know that kids should take chemistry before they take the ACT because they can score 2 points higher in science. We didn't know they should be up to math 3 before they take the ACT because they can score over 20 in that math section or whatever. So now we have all that data. So now we have our high school kids and we're pushing them through the core so we can get these better scores. But if a child mentally, you know, if their brain power isn't 3-dimensionally there to take on geometry, but maybe it would be there when they're a senior, but now they don't get such a great grade. Now they mess up their GPA. I shouldn't even say the word mess up, but they don't get as high a GPA because we're pushing. I mean, it's so complex to figure out, even for parents to help guide their kids or teachers or any of us in this whole learning environment, how to get these kids. And we have all these wonderful elective programs to help kids find out what is going to be their niche in life. So it's like, I just think to myself, wow, how do they make all these decisions as teenagers that are going to affect them the rest of their life? I mean, I think about when I taught art and we had to teach 2 points for perspective, and we're teaching buildings in 3-dimensional view on a flat sheet of paper, and you start out drawing a cube. I remember looking in the faces of some of those kids, and they could not see the cube. All they saw were lines on a piece of paper. And all you could do is just give them you go from this point to this point and put your ruler here and do this and that. They had no clue other than just to make sure you had the specific rules on the way to run the ruler. Now a math teacher has to explain three-dimensional thinking to a child that might not be ready yet, but will be there, but we're giving it to them maybe too soon.
Well, and that's the struggle because the Wisconsin academic standards state that it's a 12th grade expectation for Algebra 2, and here we are giving
Trying
our
to
kids
push it on a
the
sophomore.
ACT and holding them accountable their junior year. So that's kind of frustrating because you're right, kids will mature at different rates. Some kids are ready for algebra right away. Some kids are ready for algebra their senior year.
And they're taking that before the end of their junior year.
Yes.
Which was another.
And I
we've
sure
had
don't
that
want to send the
discussion.
message, I know we're not doing that, but I kind of heard like, well, if you don't do well in math and you don't score well, we're going to have kids that aren't really college ready or whatever, they aren't really a college. I think that if you have the will and you want to do it, you can do it. You don't have to be a really strong math student to figure out how to get into college. So that's the message too, is like a child that doesn't do very well on the ACT shouldn't get the message like, well, there you go, you black and white, you are not ready, you won't ever go to college, you can't do it.
One thing that will help that is the Aspire test that they take as a freshman and a sophomore also gives them a predictor score. So they'll be able to kind of guesstimate where they'll be for their junior ACT, and then they can also think about what courses to take to help them prepare for a career. If they want to go into medicine, then they need to take these courses, or if they want to go to liberal arts, they might need to take these courses. But Aspire can kind of help guide their options that they can take. So we don't necessarily want to say ACT, ACT, ACT. We also want to look at what their aspirations are. And that's where we have an academic career plan that'll be coming to you for 2017.
So I don't even know where my point is, because I'm thinking it's important to know that information. But then I think to myself, we have this information, but then are we pushing it too hard and stressing these kids out as teenagers and have the rest of their life to try to make these decisions?
You know, I agree with what you're saying, because I think we need to realize the population we serve in our district as well, and we want to have high standards, but we need to be realistic to the fact that there are some kids who may not go to a four-year college, and there is more, as Jill is saying, like our career planning mapping that we're going to be doing and everything that's going to help kids get focused on that, because they have to take the ACT, but we know a number of our population are not going to go to a four-year college. So what are we focusing on? How can we help them build those math skills if they're really deficient in math to get them the skills that they need to be successful in a two-year college or something post-secondary besides a four-year college as well. So we need to have some good hard discussions about some of that. And I think we need to keep that in mind because of our population. We have to focus on all of the kids, not just in making the highest kids higher, you know, and the lower kids getting up to where those higher kids are. How are we really going to help them be successful in something too?
Brian, we had this on as an action item. What do we need action on here?
Just approve the goals, to prove that you have in front of you here. That's what we're asking.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to go somebody. But you did a great job.
We have a motion, we have a second?
Second.
A motion, a second, discussion.
Are you guys really okay with 21.2?
It's just a goal.
Right. I think that they should push it a little bit more. I mean, I'm not one to say that, hey, I want you to get a 22 or whatever, but I think that they understand our position. I mean, I don't think they want to, they'll settle for anything. I mean, they're still going to strive forward, no matter if they attain the 1.1% increase or not.
Well, don't you think it depends on what your definition of a goal is? If a goal is something that you think you maybe can get to, but you really aren't really sure you can do it, is a goal. An objective is something you think you can do. You know, I'm just kind of thinking, I think about a goal, and I think it should be something that you really have to work hard to reach towards. So Ginny, if that's your point, does this seem attainable, like an objective?
It's called a target measure, so I don't think it seems like a stretch. I think it seems like a safety net. So I can approve this with the exception of that point, but I'm not the one who's gonna make the change there. That's gonna happen at the school
Right.
level. So for me
So
to dictate something, all this tells me is what the school is willing to do, and that makes me really sad.
But you gotta remember, this is the first time we've done this, so you're setting a target right there, like you said, it's a target. So next year they come back, I sure hope that we have an attainable number that we're looking for, whether it's higher or it's lower. If it's higher, then we'll let's shoot higher.
And I think too, it's important to remember that not all juniors took the ACT last year, correct?
This was the first year.
First year, so there are, in past years, there were probably quite a 60%, okay, so 40% of the kids didn't take the ACT at their junior year. So you're gonna bring in, probably kids that maybe weren't thinking college immediately as they came into high school. So chances are you're gonna bring in those that are on the lower end. So
What is the 21 point?
kids that didn't take the ACT are not gonna come out and score a 28 or 29.
Top is 35.
So what's the 21.1?
Is that-
For example, in
we're not
math,
gonna
what's the
affect it.
21.1 represent?
The average.
Of-
mean of our junior class.
And that would be the 60% or
That would be
100?
the 100% of our students.
That took it last year?
That took it during this past school year, the 2014-15 school year.
Okay, so that is representative of the entire population, and so that 40% that we're talking about is already in that number.
That was 2 years ago.
2 years
During
ago,
the
it would've been
the
60%.
13-14 school year, we had
Okay.
about 60% of our kids take the ACT.
But the 21.1 represents the
All of our
100%.
students.
Okay.
Correct.
So, but one of the things that, I hear, it seems like a small movement, and I'm not suggesting, but again, maybe part of the information would be is what does it really take to move that from a 21 to a 22? I suspect, although it doesn't seem like much, that would be a rather daunting task if you really dug into it and said, okay, we'd have to achieve this across the board in order for that to happen, which might be a nice goal, but if it's almost completely unattainable, then, is that a place to start?
I guess to Jenny's point on this, the 100% was attainable, was a goal last year.
Correct.
100%
Taking it.
No, not even for
Scoring
the
22?
ACT, for scores and stuff.
Or
mean,
grade
there's-
level achievements elsewhere?
Yeah, grade level achievements. We want 100% to be reading at grade level. That was the goal. That's, you're pushing everybody to get to that goal. I hate to bust things apart here and everything, but I understand where you're coming from on it.
I think whenever we refer to the 100%, we should also have the equivalent thought in our head for the high school, for ACT, if that's gonna be our measure. So what is our quote 100% at the high school? Is it a 22? Is it what is it? And maybe we need more information. So I will not, it doesn't do me any good to vote against this, that's not very supportive, but I think what we need is a discussion about what 100% means at our high school.
Well,
And
like
start
how many
working
more
toward it.
kids will be taking Math 3 before they take the ACT this year? Or we have more this year taking Math 3 before the test than we had last year. If that's gonna help them do better in the math section of the ACT. That would be one scenario. That's part of our logic. What are the teachers doing? I don't need to know this, but are the math teachers doing something different this year with the Math 3 or the Math 2 to get them ready for Math 3?
And that's the beauty of this whole system that we're working with tutors, because the math department will set a goal, and they'll be looking at the steps to get them to that 22. They'll be looking at ACT scores, pass for our students. They'll be looking at the range of scores. They'll be looking at the Aspire test that the kids took as freshmen and as sophomores, They'll be looking at that also, looking at that range and helping, to predict or helping move kids along that. They want them to see that growth as well. And we're fortunate that aspire is also from ACT and can give us those comparables as we move along. So there's good discussion happening at the high school around this data. They've never had the ability to do this before because they really only had the WKCE, and that came at the end of their sophomore year. It really didn't tell us anything.
It's kind of like when we had the block and we piloted it for 4 years and had all the teachers give input at the high school on what they thought about the blocks, so we could weigh the pros and cons. And maybe that's where we're at with our math department. Maybe they are the ones that will come to us in whatever set amount of time where they think the goal should be.
And we did look at the predictor, and I can't give you the number right now, but I know that the predictor for our sophomore class was at or close to the 21.2. I know from what I looked at the data, from what we were predicting.
So isn't this an improvement plan? This is not a, I'm getting, I want to vote on this and move on, because if this is an improvement plan, we shouldn't be picking the predictor.
That's true.
That's a static plan.
Actually, they selected that number, and then I went back into the data. They didn't
Okay.
know that at that point when we were looking at that. That was the number that they set. And I agree. I hear exactly what you're saying, and I really do believe that we should get to that 22%. I would love to see that in there. And
I would hope that we get closer to that after this year's ACT.
I would be, I'm gonna throw a little caveat out here to my motion and second to see if they would be willing to change their, for the friendly amendment to changing it to a 22. For both,
I don't have any problem with that.
That's fine.
that help you?
Yeah, I mean, why not? That's what. Yeah.
We want, I mean, I think what we're trying to say is, we don't want to be static, we want to grow, and if we don't, support more growth than 0.1%, we're remaining static. I guess that's my feeling as well.
And I think it will be important for us to have someone from ACT come in and talk about how much of an effort it is to move a tenth of a point, how much it is to move a point. When you
It's
look
school.
at it.
It's a school.
Right. And I think
Especially
that
when
would
you
be
bring in 40% more kids taking it that are likely to be lower. I mean, it's a great, it's fine. I'm perfectly fine making it 22, but I don't expect us to get anywhere close to it based on what you're saying. So put it in there. It doesn't mean anything right now. I mean, let's see what, I think I agree with Jay. Let's see what happens the first year, first time we do it, and then adjust and grow it from there.
Because this will be the second year that we've done it. The teachers are better prepared to prepare the kids for this test. So
They are. We've added now a summer school option to learn more about the ACT. I had a one-on-one meeting with Brian this week. He's identifying the group of students that are not as good at test taking. Okay, so that lower group, there will be a pullout, and there's going to be specific sessions on test taking skills to help them. You know, so absolutely, you know, that whole thing, if we're standing still, we're going backwards. And I respect what you're saying, Jenny, because the core of research is high expectations. Having high expectations, it's critical for any, the top performing schools have very high expectations. That's what you're saying. But what John is saying is what I really believe we're going to hear an ACT person say, to make that kind of a movement based on the way that instrument is designed be a huge step. But the other side of that coin is, why should we still set that higher? Set it high and try to attain that. So I mean, I think I don't know, we'll definitely take this back.
Like I
We'll
say,
take
we're all
this
trying
back.
to get the same thing.
We
We're
are.
trying to get, the kids to know as much as they can to be successful. And whether you set it at 20.6 or you set it at 22, it's not, you're not gonna teach to a 20.6.
Right.
I hope.
Right. We have no problem. We'll bring it back.
We have a motion, a second, with a revision in there that we change for 11th grade students, the mean reading score will increase from
Math score.
20.5,
Math score.
20.5 to 22, and the mean math score will increase from 21.1 to 22. Okay? Is everybody okay with that? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
It is homecoming week.
Yeah, it's homecoming week, I guess. Full moon probably too, eh? We'll move on to number 2, elementary co-curriculars. Mr. Wires and Mr. Mardo.
And Mr. May.
Big.
We're not sure we want to follow that conversation. Is that all right, we just sit here?
You sure can.
We're less of a target sitting down. So what we brought before you, we don't really have much other to say other than the things that you had in your packet already. What we wanted to do is come up with, Pete and Andy and I have sat down for a couple of years now and kind of evaluated our co-curriculars and trying to come up with ways that we can make things a little bit more equitable. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But we based all these things on the parameters that we had. So we knew we had this pocket of money established within this budget area of co-curriculars at the elementary level. And as a result of that, tried to work within those parameters to come up with something that would fit our objectives that we kind of listed for below. So as you look at those objectives, first one is create a new pay scale that is equitable for staff leading co-curriculars. So something that no matter what building they were in, what activity they were teaching, that it would be the same pay and equitable across the board. So that was kind of our first objective.
And the chart below really shows you that transparency of equity. We wanted to create co-curriculars as equal as possible between both schools, yet showing differences depending on what works better at the certain school. So that's why you'll see the the school columns there, and we can explain any specific co-curricular if there's any questions around them. Our second purpose was to really create that financial equity for similar co-curricular positions in each building. For example, going through this process, we found we both had science clubs, but they were paid differently, and that's not right, and we wanted to revise it with this plan. Our third point was really to divide the co-curricular positions into 2 categories of advisors and directors to make it a clear co-curricular schedule moving forward. Again, it hasn't been revised in a while, so our goal here is to make it clear for everyone to understand.
I think the fourth and final goal was really to look at the interests of our students and some of the things that they've really been kind of passionate about over the last several years, and to create opportunities for some of the things that teachers have been doing kind of with students outside of school hours, and ensuring that those staff members are getting paid for the things that they've been doing with students. So for example, robotics, gaming, coding, student newspaper, love to run, those are all things that staff members have done with students after school because they were interests and things that students were really, really interested, or things that students really want to participate in, but they weren't part of the co-curricular pay schedule prior to this. So we wanted to ensure that those coaches were also paid for their time.
And that was a real focus from, we met with our advisors at each building, and that was a real focus for a lot of the staff members who felt like, for example, Corey Hansen, who's been doing robotics club and gaming and coding club for several years now at Valley View, really, these other staff members felt passionate about the fact that he should be getting paid for that, and there were a lot of kids involved, and so they were excited about the fact that we were now going to add those clubs.
So do you have any fear of lowering the compensation for some of these groups?
That always goes over like a brick, right?
My only concern is destination imagination. That is a standard rate throughout the whole entire district, and so you're lowering it at the elementary level. And a lot of these kids, these coaches follow their kids throughout the district. The other thing that I hear a lot about is that they invest a lot of their own money on top of it, and so they don't even get really what they get as a stipend back. And so now it's being lowered.
And destination imagination is something we're going to look at the elementary level and review what we do, how we do it, and we may have some changes. So we're going to bring in some of the DI people and have that discussion, because that is a concern. I get concerned about differences if it's the same program, but we're gonna talk about how we do DI and, you know, where we do DI, because that's become, from a district standpoint, a budget issue. And from a DI club standpoint, as a parent who has kids who've been very involved in it, it's become a budgetary issue and a fundraising animal of its own. And I think we as a district need to look at that and review what we're doing for DI, because it's really grown in a big way over the last 5 or 6 years, and now we've got some issues that we need to talk about what's the right thing to do and how do we support it, and we're gonna pull that together this fall again.
So,
I was gonna say, also to kind of answer the question about some groups getting a pay cut, there were several staff members who I think felt that it wasn't right that some of their colleagues were doing some of the same things they were doing without compensation, and so for a lot of these staff members, they were understanding the fact that there's a limited amount of money. These are things that kids are really passionate about, and I mean, they kind of shared, this is something that's been shared with all of the coaches. They have shared that they understand that in order to continue to provide opportunities for kids, and in order to, I think no coach necessarily, especially maybe, well, I think at any level, they know that they're not doing it just for the money, it's for the passion for the things that they're doing. And they were, I think, understanding of the fact that in order to be fair for everyone, that this was kind of something that needed to happen in order to even things out.
So does Pioneer, I think it does not do a musical, a spring musical?
I think Pete brought that up. Oh, I'm sorry, Pete.
No, you go.
We do kind of the same thing, but it's a little bit different. And so we both do a winter musical, but we do a spring musical where Pete does an animated choir. And so it may be called something a little bit differently. So on your list, it's not on there, but Pete does, at Pioneer, there's an intermediate choir that's in the spring instead of doing a musical that performs in May, I think, Pete.
Yep, and that's with 4th and 5th grade students after school.
You know, I don't have a problem with adding different things that kids are interested in different programs. I just hope that the reductions don't backlash. And, you know, if there's
We don't want to take away any money.
If there's some of them that are, don't, I mean, you're, what is it, 4 of them that you're adding?
Yeah. Yes.
You know, that's a couple, what,
$1,600
$1,000 or something, you know, it's not that much money.
Or conversely, the reduction is less than about $800. If you total up all the reduction, you know, we've had that conversation too. I don't want to see DI go backwards in involvement. It's been a very successful program. But on the other hand, I really respect the parameter, the approach that you took was we're working with this pool of money. That's something we can also look at is if we didn't reduce DI at all, what's the net increase? It's $800 or something. I mean, really, I mean,
And
at the end of the day, we're not.
Caution you on is, your statement concerns me a little, Mark, because next meeting we'll have 50 people here with new clubs they want to have. And I'll tell you, on an average fall, I will get calls from principals, every principal, every building. We have people interested in this. We've got somebody who's doing a coding and gaming club and not getting paid for it, but it's getting big. You know, every year I get these calls. And every year I put it off and I give them credit because they took it on after I said, if you could make it work within the amount of money we have budgeted, I'd love to hear it. And nobody ever wants to take that on because that's a tough thing, and I give them a lot of respect for taking it on and looking at it and making those tough choices. I'll tell you, this is one of those things every school district struggles with. What's a fair compensation for it? As Kurt mentioned, you want people doing it for the right reasons because they're passionate about it, not to get rich. And they're not getting rich off of these stipends. They need to be passionate about it. But it's a balancing act. And Ginny asked the question in the previous item, how much are we taking away from what's happening in the classroom by what we're doing here? Well, this is the same thing. If we start having annual expenses taking, you know, where we increase those, what's it going to take away in the classroom? And it may seem like $400 or $800 isn't a lot, but now you have it at both buildings, and now you affect, well, that club gets bigger, now you have 2 advisors or 3 advisors, and now the middle school adds it, then the high school, and it becomes like DI. DI started as a couple DI coaches at a building, and I'm gonna guess that, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, we're over 20,
Yeah,
30?
I'm gonna
30, over
use
30.
value as an example. When I started here 6 years ago, Valley, we had 17. This year, we're up to like anywhere from 11 to 14 teams at $500.
Without Rising Stars, we're at
Right.
about 20 with Rising
Yep.
Stars.
And then, so then what happens then with the coordinator's position, she was paid for 17, but now she's being paid for 14 teams. So that's doubling that amount. So, and it's all based on how many kids wanna do it.
The
So
other piece
there
to
could be
that-
a huge difference between Pioneer and Valley because Pioneer has less teams.
The other
So
piece
the
to
co-
that is we pay out of the Valley View building budget, not out of the co-curricular budget. We reimburse each coach $90 for supplies. And so now you multiply that times 20 teams, now that's $1,800 that I'm paying out of our building budget to pay for DI as well, so.
So it's just because when we start saying this is small dollar months, remember, small dollar months add up to big dollar months. So you look at how many sections of something you have, or if you don't have one thing offset the other, and I would be hesitant to have you say, well, let's just add these, because I know at the middle school, for example, this year, I worked with Scott Conrad on some sports things, and we were able to do soccer and reduce something else, and my statement to him was, if you can make it for the same money, we'll support it. And we've been able to do some of those, okay, we don't have a lot of students interested in this, but now they're interested in this, and make these changes. So if we go away from that, just be ready for all those chairs to be full with people with their pet request project group. And they're all great for kids. I'm not saying any of them are bad, but there's only so much we can fit into our budget, and I've tried to take the tact of, this is how much we have carved out in our budget, keep it within this amount. And they've done a great job of that, and there's gonna be fallout from it. You'll have somebody unhappy that they're getting something less, and we can look at that. But I think the way they approached it of how much time does it take, how many students are involved, how long is it a quarter of the year, is it year long, all those things play into it. And there's no fair answer, because person A might do, I remember years ago we had mock trial, and we had somebody who was really passionate about it at the high school. Well, she took the amount of time that the previous person who did it and probably quadrupled it. Did it for 2 years, and she came to me, she said, do you realize how much time I'm putting into this? This stipend isn't fair. And I looked at her, and I appreciated all the work she was doing, but I said, you're doing all that because you have a passion for it, but that's not what's required. You're taking it to the next step, and that's great, but we can't, if the next person takes that position, if you step down, and they don't put all that time in, now we've got the stipend up here at an unrealistic level, and it's really one of those things that there's no winning on, because when someone's passionate about it, they're gonna put a lot of hours. You use a football coach as an example. A football coach who's watching film, scouting games, and doing practices, and doing all these things, can put in a huge amount of time, and a football coach who's just kind of going along with it isn't. And I think we've got the huge amount of time coaches on our end in a lot of sports, but you just see that change by the person in the role. So it gets dangerous when we start looking at how much time one person puts in.
I think it's similar at all of the levels, but same thing. Each year I have staff coming to me with ideas that they want to do, and I need to look at them and say, I'm sorry, you're welcome to do it if you'd like to, but there's no additional money for co-curriculars. In the most recent cases, we have a new staff member who started an anime club. Anime is the Japanese cartoon stuff. At least 30 kids. There have been 2 meetings. At least 30 kids already attending it. The staff member just said, that's okay, it's a passion of mine, it's good with me, but it also comes to a point where, then they.
That maybe that's where it needs to be. Maybe instead of us as a school board trying to vote on this, because we don't know all the specifics, but you as principals know, you're seeing what's going on in your building. You see how many kids are there and how long that co-curricular is sustained. Because I had the same thing. I had the art club in the high school, which was a nice size art club, or probably almost the biggest club in the high school. Then anime came in. All these kids created their own club, and it ended up being the biggest club in the high school. I had like 25 to 30 kids, and they wouldn't make it a club, so we ended up making it a sub-club within the art club. I didn't ask for any more money, I didn't get paid anymore, so I actually had 2 clubs going on. And then when I stepped out, I don't know if Anna Mae's still there, but somebody else took on the art club, and it dwindled, and I don't even know if they met once a month. I know at one time they weren't. So then do you pay that person who's not even meeting more than once a month the same? So I think it's almost up to, I think, the principal. We give you a budget maybe or something,
And
and
that's
you
what I've
make
done.
the decisions. You know, like I look at Love to Run. That seems like a great, you know, we want kids to be physically fit and exercise. But over at Pioneer, we have those beautiful tennis courts. Wouldn't it be great to have a tennis program? Yeah, because I'm into tennis, because I think it'd be nice to have a tennis feeder program, and I think Pete's a great tennis player. He'd be a great coach.
Well, and the ripple effect then is too, was your Love to Run like a volunteer thing for, so we have a Love to Run that's volunteer. So now there's a Love to Run that is
Volunteering and now we pay one,
right.
is what you're saying?
It might even be the same family, I don't know for sure. But, yeah, so it's a bigger thing than.
Yeah, and and Pete, if you have Love to Run and it's really popular and you have a lot of children involved and they're meeting every other day or a couple times a week, and over at the other elementary school, Kurt, you have Love to Run, but you have a small group and they're hardly meeting more than a couple times a month, do we pay those two people the same amount? It doesn't make sense. So I really think we don't have control of it.
But I think we need some consistency,
Yeah.
and I like the way they put it together, so the elementaries are consistent. I agree with Chris's concern about what's gonna happen, and Jennifer's concern as the amount between buildings differs, but it differs already. Varsity football coach or basketball coach or baseball coach makes a different pay rate than a freshman coach, so it's not unprecedented to have different pay rates for similar jobs at different levels. I like the idea, it's worked well, the idea of telling the principals, this is the budget you've got, reshuffle it. Otherwise, I'm telling you, you're gonna have flow, people coming in wanting to add.
So what do you said you had a concern with DI. I mean, do you exclude that one thing out of this budget? This
I think go with this, we will meet with DI, because we're gonna talk about some of the issues beyond just the coaches' pay with DI, and we're gonna talk through how we can make this sustainable long-term, because as a big supporter of it, I want this to stay as a high visibility program in the district and stay long-term. I'm not sure the way it's going, it's sustainable long-term. And I know the people who are doing fundraising are working their tails off to fundraise, and the amount of money they're fundraising is substantial. And I worry when those people aren't able to or desire not to continue doing that, what's gonna happen to our DI. So I think we need to look at that group and see what's sustainable and make sure we have enough people doing the work. Because right now I see a couple people who are very dedicated, spending a lot of time, and I see a program that's very visible and very successful, but I just don't know that the way it's being done we can sustain.
Well, and then you look at like robotics, and look at how much money we have as a district into our robotics program, and now we're gonna have, it'd be great to have a robotics club. It's a feeder program right into our middle school and high school program. Same thing with student newspaper. We have so much money in our graphics lab. I'm assuming these kids are gonna learn all about Photoshop and the Creative Suite. What a great opportunity, and we have so much money budgeted in our computer programs. So I mean, I think it's awesome, but yeah, how do we, and the principals, like you're doing, figure it out and let us just say, once you bust your budget, come back and ask us as these programs, if they grow. If they sustain after so many years and they grow, can we
Nick
find
is really good at staying within and shuffling money from one program to another. For example, the numbers in chess club fell, so the chess club co-curricular went away, and Pete took that money and fed it into skin cancer.
see like that?
You
We
know,
won't have
same way,
knowledge of
football
that.
will come and say, I want another coach. Well, that's fine. There's this much money in football. Then you need to sit down with your coaches and divide that money up. He does it with the musicals. He's got this much money, and the musical group sits down and determines how it's to be divvied out.
We've done the same thing at Valley View when we met with our advisors. We talked about the clubs that, we talked about, and Pete and I were talking about kind of going over how many kids are involved, how do the advisors feel about those clubs? Because as you add things, they're gonna take interest where, you know, as a kid, maybe, just give me an example, and again, it's maybe not a good comparison, but a kid who's involved or really likes the robotics club, maybe not join the science club, because he really wants to be, that's a new interest of his or hers. And so now they want to join the robotics team. So maybe as we evaluate, maybe one of these programs won't be there at the end of the year. I think the point that Keith brought up is an important one. We're asking you to approve this for next year. So we already have contracts up, and some of these co-curriculars are already this year. And so, other than the new clubs that we want to start this year, this is going to go into effect. So we have time to have this discussion with the group.
Make a motion to approve the new elementary co-curricular proposals as presented.
Second.
Motion and second.
I was just gonna say, let's do it.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
3, curriculum approval requirement. Joe?
In your board materials, there's a document regarding the approval of the July state budget. And within that budget, there's a requirement now that school districts need to inform parents or guardians of the standards that are utilized each year within the school district. And so what I'm doing tonight is coming before you to ask for you to formally approve of the standards that we use to guide our curriculum. And then following that approval, notice will go out to parents in 2 different mechanisms. It can go out electronically, and it will also go out in school newsletters. But I just want to back up for a second, because the information that I included in your packet already has a bit of a change. What we refer to as the Common Core state standards is no longer referred to as the Common Core state standards. They are now the Wisconsin academic standards. So our school superintendent has made that delineation. That was just done in the last couple of weeks, and so we no longer refer to the Common Core as the Common Core. It is part of the Wisconsin academic standards. And in fact, when I go to the website now, there's no longer a link to that national organization. So when we talk about the standards that we do utilize the Wisconsin academic standards as our foundation. We do also look to national organizations for information on best practices. They also have recommendations for curriculum. We've looked at NSTA, that's the Next Generation Science Standards, and that is a phenomenal group of standards. We're kind of at a standstill at the state right now because science was up for review and rewrite of standards in 2013. But with the advent of a lot of the politicalness around national standards, the DPI has backed off of that, and we don't look to have any standards change until about 2020. So in the meantime, we'll continue to look at the Wisconsin standards in science and in social studies, but we are going to draw upon the Next Generation Science Standards, and we'll also be looking at the National Council of Teachers of Social Studies. They have a phenomenal curriculum out there as well, or standards out there for us to utilize. And
Okay, so what it says Common Core state standards for English, that should say
Wisconsin.
It's all Wisconsin academic standards from this point forward.
Okay.
That's what it's referred to at the state level. I haven't gotten any formal word on that.
Is it different, or did they just
It's the
change
same.
the title?
It's the same. It's the same standards. They've just enveloped that now into the Wisconsin standards.
Okay.
So it's mandated that we do the Wisconsin academic standards, but the national standards that we're referring to, is that our district choice?
Right, because what some people would say is very powerful about the state of Wisconsin is we do utilize choice. We do look at the model academic, or the academic standards, but we also have that flexibility to pull in other standards or, I would say, benchmarks as well. And so we will utilize the Next Generation Science Standards and
But
the
that's
NCSS.
specific to our district,
That's
potentially?
specific, yes,
But the Wisconsin academic is not,
correct.
and that is mandated state.
Well,
I
we have the
assume.
latitude. We do not have to accept the Wisconsin
Oh, okay.
model, Wisconsin, I call them model academic standards, but it's now just Wisconsin standards. We
Okay.
have that ability with us as a school board to not utilize those.
Okay.
But I would recommend that we do because they're very well written, with the exception again of science and social studies, who they need to be updated.
So, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'll make a motion to approve these standards.
Second.
I will be coming to you yearly, because that is a new expectation within the state budget.
Okay, got a motion and a second to approve the standards as presented. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 4, sub-teacher settlement. Keith?
Sub-teacher pay has been frozen for 4 years. We have started to see shortages in sub-teachers and have had in the past year some positions go unfilled, leaving the principals to scramble to find a way to make sure we have somebody appropriate in front of students and learning is still happening. So I met with the leader from the sub-teacher group. It's no longer a union, but it's a group. They came and requested a $2 a day increase. We talked it through. We agreed on a $1 a day increase. I think it's fair. I think it will help with the sub-teacher shortage. It will not. It's not going to solve the problem, but what the problem is, the sub-teachers in this area, because we have so many districts so closely located, a teacher can teach here, West De Pere, Howard Swamico, Green Bay, Pulaski. So a dollar can make a difference when they're deciding where they want to go. And I don't know where the other districts are going, but my indirect feedback from my counterparts in other districts is they're all going in this range as well. So we need to stay comparable to the other districts around us, or we could see it get worse.
Do you have the comparables?
No, they haven't settled, and we have to avoid collusion. We can't work together on what we're gonna do, so we can't tell each other what we're doing until we've settled.
Has the feedback been money is the big factor?
No, the big factor is employment rate. When people are out, when unemployment rate's high, there's a lot of people out there. But now unemployment rate isn't as high, and I think there are less teachers coming out of the colleges looking for work. So as you see less teachers looking for work, you have a less young teacher pool, and I think we've also, in our district, seen our retiree numbers per year dwindle, where they're much smaller. And those are a lot of our core subs, our teachers who've retired in recent years. So some of those teachers who retired 7 or more years ago now are full retiring and they're not subbing anymore. And so we've got all those factors working together. It's the same issue we're having with bus drivers. When the employment rate goes up or unemployment rate goes down, there's less people looking for these things or willing to take a job where they don't know how many days they're going to get.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion, we approve the $1 a day increase in the sub-teacher pay as presented.
I'll second it.
I'm totally blown away that 20 cents or whatever it is, 10 cents an hour is going to make that much of a difference.
I don't disagree.
But, so be it.
I will say, comparable across the state, when I look at last year's rates, this area is very high. When you go to other parts of the state, the $100 limit is more.
Yeah, but
we're competing with this region.
I'm just saying that if we're struggling to get teachers in here for subs or whatever, that
I don't know the dollar's gonna help it, but not having it will hurt it.
change your philosophy on what you're gonna do. Okay, we got a motion and a second. All's in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Just so you know, if we had a sub that worked every day, that's $25,000 they make.
I know. Okay.
So Kathy reminded me.
I'll tell you some more on that. We wouldn't allow a sub to work every day because then under
Obviously.
Affordable Care Act, we have to offer them health insurance.
Right.
So I
No.
monitor that to make sure we stay underneath the health.
I mean, but if they did every single day at one of the school
Right.
districts around here, and they're all on the average at 42,000.
And the other thing you should be aware of is long-term sub rate is higher than that. It's tied to the teacher base. So when we have somebody on an extended absence, that's how we can try to attract a more qualified person. And that rate automatically adjusts when the teacher base increases.
Okay. Move on to number 6, Ashwaubenon School District Pool Auditorium lease with the Village of Ashwaubenon. In the background information, you see a copy of the lease. This went before village board last week as well. One change that was made at the village board level is that on the second page, the lease expiration termination, in your packet, you can see the change in it already. This is a revised copy that was approved, not just the one that I had from my meeting last week, so it's already changed by legal counsel. Actually, the 2-1 was combined into one paragraph instead of two. Basically, what it does is that what it did before, what the change made at the village board level was at the end of 25 years that the village gave the school district the pool and auditorium. And the rationale for moving it, they're changing it to this lease where it went after 25 years, it'll automatically renew, the lease will automatically renew for 1-year periods, because we don't know what that board is, what the laws and requirements are gonna be at that time, if that's gonna make sense for us to do it. We didn't wanna hand tie the boards at that time, what would be the best thing for them to do either. So it's, we took that out of there from just handing it over to the school district. And it's also a village asset, so we didn't know the legalities of that either, if it should be done across the board just by doing it that way. It's on school district property, but I think the intent is that the school district take it over. I think that'd be based on the shared services agreement that, I mean, we're gonna be maintaining it and having insurance on it, and so is the village, while it's being paid for it. So, that's a little bit of the background on that.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, everything else looks good in the lease.
Sure. I think it makes sense. It would've been nice if they would've given it to us, but
No.
maybe that wasn't gonna happen. Right, Mike?
I didn't hear.
No.
I said that,
No.
that makes sense, but I knew you weren't gonna give it to us.
I know it made sense because I voted for it.
Well, of course, that it did.
So, we need to make a formal
I'll make
adoption
a
of this.
motion to adopt the lease agreement as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Number 7, shared services agreement. This is basically just putting it in paper and writing on what the village does, what the school district does.
It's really updating it, because we
Updating
had
it.
this before and now we're adding it.
When was the last time?
It was updated?
Yeah.
Dave Schmidt was superintendent. But they've been minor ones. Every superintendent's had a kick at this, but it's such a great cooperative agreement
Oh, yeah.
that other communities are jealous of, where we work so well together that it's just a matter of updating when something changes as far as facilities.
Yeah, it's mainly done because of the pool and auditorium, the things were added in on there. On number 5, general responsibilities, one thing that was changed because the, I think it's on there is the term of the thing. It goes into the 1-year rollover as well, so that at the end of 25 years, but if something changes, we can always, go back and try to update it.
And the great thing, it's never a equal trade deal, it's what's best for the taxpayers. It's not, well, this makes sense, well, if we're gonna give this up, we should get something in return. No, it's about what's best for the taxpayers, and we've worked so well with the village on it that it's an awesome agreement, and I can't.
Highly unique.
Is it?
Highly unique.
I got one question. It's not so much about a shared services agreement, it's more so the property lines. I mean, we talked about cleaning up the property lines in Pioneer Park and possibly Parkview. Are we, Cliffstein, are we gonna do that as well?
Alice and I talked about this several times, and the last time we talked about it, our decision was to wait until the remediation was done, and then we'd figure out where we're gonna, whether, right now, for those of you who don't know, the Ed Kirchner baseball field, the part of the infield and right field is district property. The rest of the infield and left field and center field are village property. The line goes right through, and then the line goes right through part of Parkview School.
Yeah.
So it's the strangest thing in the world. It works because we work so well with the village. But we've talked about how do we straighten that up. Also, the parking lot at Parkview, a good portion of that is on the village, but we really maintain it and use it. So we've talked about, once the remediation's done, we'll figure out how we redraw the lines and get that set up. We've just got so many projects going to mess with this in the middle of this other thing, especially since there's legal issues with the remediation. Put it aside and deal with it after the dust settles.
Another area we've just had discussions about administratively too is just, it's in the agreement as far as overtime with like police liaison officer, to use that example. If it's overtime, like this week we have a police liaison officer working overtime at the high school, patrolling, that should be on our plate. But if it's overtime for Packer games or whatever, obviously that falls on the village side, so just a clarification, given the dollar amount involved with those two people, it's something that we just, want to have that conversation. We talked to Allison about it.
Yeah, I just read that paragraph. I have to admit, I did not read this before this meeting for some reason. And what I didn't know is the aquatics coordinator. Is that new to split that?
Nope.
That was in
Still
there
been
prior?
that way
Okay.
since I've been here.
Okay.
Just a question, because I've experienced it, that number 5 on page 3, is there a reason why that the pay can't be handled internally instead of this
The reason
split?
the
I
swim
just want to
lessons
say,
are
for the
done
people
this
that
way,
actually work
there is
it,
a
it's
reason.
confusing as
Yeah.
all.
The reason it's done this way is the DPI rules, so we can count summer swim lessons as part of summer school, are very cumbersome and a pain. So we have to have it set up this way, and the way we do it has been approved by the auditors, as that's legitimate, so we can count those minutes of instruction for summer school.
Okay, there's a reason.
You know, when you get raped up with that much red tape, you can't swim anymore.
Trust
Just
me,
think
like I was
right.
thinking when we had our last audit on that one.
Okay, do we have a motion on the shared services agreement?
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All's in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Board and superintendent communications. Anybody have anything? I know we got one email from one gentleman about the Ed Kirchmar Field, just a short
I
email.
got 3.
I got 2.
Free baseball.
I got 1. Okay. If they did come to your personal one, please ask that we do send them to the village email for
School district, you mean?
What?
School
The
district?
school district.
School district.
Excuse me, sorry.
Open records email?
Yeah, oh, yeah, sorry. So, just keep that in mind, and if you don't know it, call Brad.
Okay.
Yeah. Future board meetings and topics. I mean, we talked about the topics here just a minute ago as far as wanting to have something for ACT, if possible. And I don't know if we had any discussions. I mean, I don't know if they're calling them something different, but talking to some other school board members this weekend. Fab Labs. I don't exactly know what they're talking about, but the K-12 Fab Labs. And it sounds like some school, maybe it's something like our school, high school's got right now, but I don't know, it might be an interesting topic to do some looking at.
But it's related to, I think, what we're looking at in the tech ed area and fabrication and sensing machines and things like that, so that.
I didn't get enough chance to talk to them long enough, but I just thought I'd throw it out
It's
there.
on that same strand that we're working on trying to make improvements.
Well, can I mention too, on Saturday, October 24th, is the second annual Walktober event at Ashwaubenon. So you're around and you want to do a 2-mile walk run, please come. And I actually have my check here for our Innovation Lab. So the Bo Metler Foundation is donating $25,000 to the Innovation Center at the high school.
Nice.
So come join us Saturday, October 24th.
Cool. Anything else?
Let's have more of those announcements.
Yes, Mike.
I just want to ask if sometime in December or January, we could get on the agenda regarding libraries and the changing of we're trying to morph our present branch library into something more than a library, sort of the next generation of what libraries are. Sense of place making, creativity, innovation, providing something other than just books, and providing opportunities, training, all that kind of stuff. So we're sort of talking, Mr. Mendek will hear all about this when he's on the county board later on, but right now, we're working on that as a group because we found as we went around and we looked at different housing options, redevelopment of the village, there's things like that that are lacking that we need to pick up in our community. And this would be a perfect opportunity to morph present libraries into the libraries of the future. It would include some of that stuff. So I like to work in conjunction with the schools. And I had preliminary talks with the Brown County Library and preliminary talks with a group called Impact 7 out in Milwaukee. And they're doing a similar activity in Racine like this. So I'd like to pursue that. Might take us a year or two to get it all together, but I'd like to pursue it and then make this board aware as we progress along that there might be opportunities that you could also participate in.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Anything else? The next board meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 26th, right here at the district office at 6:30.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Your motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Mike will talk about it as long as it doesn't involve toxic dirt.
Doesn't involve what?
Toxic dirt.
No, I'm sick of toxic dirt.